At 132 Lusted at Euclid in one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, we're in beautiful, lush green Point Douglas. And we're here because the city has put forth an idea to have a secondary plan for this neighborhood. So we're going to hear this morning what students, also what principals, educators, residents, business owners, all in this neighborhood have to say about what they want moving forward for Point Douglas. Thanks so much for being with us. This is CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. The rain just stopped. It had been raining. We've got a mostly clear sky right now, actually. But we still have the rainfall warning for up into Dewey Lake and Churchill. 24 millimeters of rain still expected throughout today. Our high in Winnipeg is 15 degrees. It's going to be a little bit windy today, and but mostly cloudy. We have a slight chance we'll see more showers this afternoon. I'm sure your umbrella is a fixture by now at the back door. Let's say good morning to the team. Corey Funk here on site with me. Good morning, Corey. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, to Dylan Longhurst, to Kevin Nipatebo, as well as Brad Lillies, who are all back in Studio 15's control room, helping us out with our show today. So let's go to Heather Wells. It has been a busy 24 hours in news, and she's here with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, we are learning more about a Winnipeg man who fled the scene of a fatal shooting by police in southern Manitoba yesterday. David Burling was arrested in the afternoon following a manhunt in southeast Saskatchewan. Police say the 29-year-old took off in a stolen vehicle after a man was shot dead by police at a gas station in Niverville early yesterday morning. The Manitoba Centennial Centre has started locking most of its exterior doors around the clock. That is the centre that houses the Manitoba Museum and Centennial Concert Hall. And people who use the parkade now have to buzz in through security. We're going to hear what's been happening there coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
We're this morning on the program going to open our special show hearing a conversation here at Iroquois with two school principals who work in Point Douglas, one here and one at Gonzaga Middle School. We're going to hear what students in the neighborhood they say need to thrive. In addition, we are going to hear more about residents in this neighborhood and what they did 22 years ago. They fought to shut down a corner grocery store that was selling solvents. They turned it into the North Point Douglas Women's Center. As we look to the future of Point Douglas, we'll hear from their manager of operations.
Stay with us.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Our show is not typically the place to get the news until now. Huey Lewis will be here to talk about his new musical based on the music of his band, Huey Lewis and the News, touring Europe when he was 16, and the devastation of losing his hearing. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
A lone piper with the Canadian Armed Forces Band plays on Juno Beach. Canadian soldiers came ashore there June 6, 1944. They were among the tens of thousands of British and American soldiers landing on the beaches in Normandy. The invasion was pivotal in stopping the Nazi regime and ending the Second World War. Leaders from the Allied nations are in Normandy this morning, along with the declining number of veterans. The CBC's Murray Brewster is at the Canadian Memorial Service. And Murray, what's been happening there this morning?
Marcia, we've had Prime Minister Justin Trudeau who paid tribute to the surviving veterans of D-Day who are present.
We remember your sacrifice. We remember your stories.
Now, there are only a few Second World War veterans seated here today in the front row, several of them in wheelchairs. And there was a really nice moment when the Prime Minister was greeted by D-Day veteran Honorary Lieutenant General Richard Romer. He was a fighter pilot on D-Day, and he gave the Prime Minister a really warm handshake and a grandfatherly pat on the cheek. Trudeau has been accompanied today by Prince William, and he is standing in for his father, King Charles, whose ongoing cancer treatment has limited him to participation in the British ceremony.
Murray, this is all happening at a very crucial time in the world. How is that all affecting what is happening on the stage and at the commemorations today?
Well, remembrance is front and center, but the fact that there is a full-fledged war raging in Eastern Europe, the kind that D-Day was supposed to end, is lingering in the background here everywhere. Now, ahead of the service, the Prime Minister met with the European Council President, Charles Michel, And, we've not had a readout of the conversation yet, but it's likely they talked about the war in Ukraine. Next week, G7 leaders are going to be tackling that subject, including discussions as to what to do with frozen Russian assets. And Trudeau made passing reference in his speech to what's going on today, saying that democracy is still under threat. It's threatened by aggressors who want to redraw borders, by demagoguery, misinformation, disinformation, and foreign interference.
All right. Thank you, Murray.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Murray Brewster in Crozet-sur-Mer. As Europe marks D-Day, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz told German parliamentarians that foreigners and asylum seekers who commit crimes would be deported. Last week, a police officer was killed and 4 other people injured in a knife attack by someone identified as an Afghan immigrant. And as Rebecca Collard reports, Scholz then spoke about Ukraine.
Also on the issue of security, Scholz said Ukraine can use German weapons to strike inside Russia. We have jointly reaffirmed that Ukraine has the right under international law to defend itself against attacks on its territory, its cities and its citizens, said Scholz. Ukraine can also use the weapons supplied by us and our allies to defend itself against such attacks. Germans have been divided on sending weapons to Ukraine. Many fear being pulled into a direct military confrontation with Russia 80 years after the end of the Second World War. The U.S. has also said it has authorized Ukraine to use its weapons to strike inside Russia. And yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin implied his country could use nuclear weapons if its sovereignty or territorial integrity were threatened. And he could supply weapons to states that could hit Ukraine's Western allies. If we see that these countries become involved in a war against us, what they're doing makes them directly involved in a war against the Russian Federation, we reserve the right to act in the same way, he said. And as Europe remembers D-Day, fears are growing once again that the war in Ukraine could expand. Rebecca Collard for CBC News, Berlin.
Polls open in European elections today. Next to India, this is the largest bloc of voters. More than 370 million people could cast ballots through to Sunday. And as Susan Ormiston reports, the results will reshape EU politics and policies.
We have had enough of the political elites telling us what to do. So get out and vote. Use your power as a citizen.
Voters are restless across the 27 countries in the EU. European elections are often a scorecard on national governments, and in the Netherlands, voters are shifting right, says political geographer Josse de Voogd.
The main issue is migration. That people are afraid that the Dutch culture will be affected about this. And furthermore, people are critical about green policies, about how they will affect people, especially the lower classes.
A majority of Europeans cite climate change as a priority, but the cost of living and security given the war in Ukraine are driving this vote. A far-right party, PVV, which aims to stop, quote, climate hysteria, amongst other things, is pulling support from the left. Leader Geert Wilders, who recently won Dutch elections, is looking to replicate that shift in Europe's parliament.
The next coming days are crucial to the future of Europe. Will it be with more open borders and immigration, or will it be a lot tougher? This is something that we are aiming for.
Polls are projecting the existing Conservative coalition will remain the majority in the EU, but that Europe's Green Party will shed strength and the far right could surge. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Amsterdam.
To India, and a ceremony to mark the 40th anniversary of Operation Blue Star. That is when the Indian Army opened fire inside one of the Sikh religion's most holy spots, an operation that left hundreds dead and one that deeply marked the state of Punjab. Our South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more from Amritsar.
The inner sanctum of the Golden Temple in Amritsar is full of faithful, here to commemorate a bloody day 40 years ago. June 6, 1984, when Indian troops stormed the holy site to get to a militant separatist Sikh leader and his followers barricaded inside. Official figures put the death toll at around 400 people, but Sikh groups believe the number is in the thousands. The order to charge in came from then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, and those gathered here won't forget that.
The Indian state attacked a pilgrimage temple.
They have used the tanks, commandos, full
to kill 6.
It changed Indian history in a time of militancy and violence in Punjab. Months later, Gandhi was assassinated by her Sikh bodyguards, and deadly riots broke out. The rancor still simmers years later, says 19-year-old Harshvinder Singh.
There is not much difference between the government of Indira Gandhi and the current government.
That's clear, he says, when some who are still advocating for a separate Sikh state called Khalistan are jailed under the National Security Act. He's talking about hardliner Amritpal Singh, who ran in the general election from jail and won. The son of one of Indira Gandhi's assassins also secured a seat in India's parliament. But for others at the temple like Prableen Kaur, today is not about politics, it's about remembrance.
To not let it happen again, because Sikhs are still a minority in this country and you never know.
Salima Shivji, CBC News, Amritsar.
A private member's bill in the Senate, if passed, could see the creation of Canada's first ever national strategy to combat intimate partner violence. Bill S-249 is close to reaching the House of Commons. As Ariana Kelland reports, it all began when a Newfoundland woman started sharing her story and teamed up with a local senator.
My last beating was September the 25th, 2014.
Earlier this spring, a woman from eastern Newfoundland took a deep breath and addressed members of the Senate in Ottawa.
I am Georgina McGrath, and I am a survivor of intimate partner violence.
McGrath is outspoken about the abuse she suffered, but says advocating on a provincial level isn't enough.
It has to be Canada as a whole, because we have to talk about every woman or every person that's being abused.
So in 2017, McGrath approached a politician from her community who she trusted.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Fabian Manning. I'm a senator from Newfoundland and Labrador.
Known for his dedication to the fishery, Senator Manning has now turned his attention to the issue of intimate partner violence. He proposed a private member's bill and promised McGrath he'd stick with it. Since he submitted the bill in 2018, StatsCan says the number of intimate partner violence cases reported to police have steadily increased.
I've met personally with 120-odd women here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
If passed, the bill would require government to make a strategy within 2 years, tackling things like how abuse should be reported in hospitals and clinics.
It's sad that we have to do this. It's sad that intimate partner violence is such an issue. But it is. It's reality.
McGrath and Manning hope it will go to the House of Commons in the fall. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
What do you like about living here in Point Douglas?
It feels really like it's its own place.
What makes it feel like it's its own place?
Because how much parks there are. All my family lives here, and it's one nice neighborhood. Hi, I'm Colin, and I'm in grade 6. You are listening to Information Radio, live from Norquay School in Point Douglas.
That is right. I'm Marcy Marcus with CBC. This is our community studio. Walking to Norquay, you're going to see it, the home of Norquay Eagles. It's also our home this morning for our special broadcast. Thank you for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. So why are we in Point Douglas today? Well, the city has said that they are, in the words of the councillors, finally putting forward a secondary plan for this neighborhood and what the future of Point Douglas could hold. So our whole show today is going to be looking at that. This hour, a conversation with two school principals right here in Point Douglas about what students in the neighborhood, like the one we just heard from, need to thrive. So stay tuned, we'll have that conversation. Also, 22 years ago, residents here fought to shut down a corner grocery store that was selling solvents. They turned it into the North Point Douglas Women's Centre. Today, as we look at the future of Point Douglas, we're going to hear from their manager of operations. So stay tuned for those conversations. Right now, though, let's go back to Studio 15 and find out from Heather Wells what's making news this morning. Hi there.
Hi. Well, that suspect arrested after yesterday's cross-border manhunt has run from police before. We are learning more about 29-year-old David Frank Burling. He was arrested in Springside, Saskatchewan yesterday afternoon. That's just northwest of Yorkton. And it follows a police chase that started in Winnipeg and led officers to Niverville, where police shot and killed a man. So we'll be hearing more about this man who took off and started that manhunt. Parents in Sage Creek want to know why the province is delaying funding for their new school. The planned K-8 French immersion school is going to serve Sage Creek and Bonavista. It was supposed to open in September 2025. And the Louis Riel School Division is now thinking about borrowing millions to keep construction on track. Those stories and more coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So if you're trying to picture where we are this morning in Point Douglas, Norquay's at 132 Lusted at Euclid. Pretty much if you turn on Euclid right off of Main Street, you're going to find us. And the neighborhood really opens up into this beautiful expanse of a mix of old residential homes in Point Douglas. And then, of course, a lot of industry if you cross over underneath to the other side, because there's North and South Point Douglas. So we're going to talk about all those things this morning. But what I can tell you, Abby, is that after that rain this morning, I just went outside at 6. The trees are rustling with that gorgeous breeze. It smells so fresh out there. But I'll tell you what, I really don't care for any more rain myself. What are we expecting today?
Yeah, you talked about breeze. It's still going to be gusty later, so brace for that. Right now, Winnipeg, it's 11 degrees and cloudy. We started with a few showers that should be ending this morning. It will stay mostly cloudy for the rest of the day and a chance of more showers later. And expect a breezy day with winds coming from the northwest. A high for today will touch 15 degrees. And as we move into the evening periods, the skies will begin to clear up, and then the winds that we talked about earlier will be coming down, becoming light after midnight. Let's go up north for a bit. We have rainfall warning still in effect for northern part of the province, affecting to the lake and Churchill. As of this morning, Churchill has already received 24 millimeters of rain, and to the lake has seen about 61 millimeters. Additional rainfall accumulations of 10 to 20 millimeters expected in Churchill by Friday morning, and 30 to 50 in Tudor Lake over the same period of time. And this rain is expected to continue through Friday, but should be tapering off by the end of Saturday morning, and residents advised to watch for possible localized flooding in low-lying areas and be cautious of potential washouts near rivers, creeks, and coverts. But in Winnipeg, it's 11. We have some showers ending this morning, and then we've got strong winds staying with us all day, gusting to 60 at times, and today's high, a cool 15 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks, Abby. Well, we'll take 15, I guess. Let's get into what's going on in the morning commute. Dylan Longhurst has those details.
Yeah, not much happening right now on the commute. It's a bit of a overcast day, bit windy, bit cold. So if you're out there as an active commuter, you might want to plan accordingly for that. But if you see something slowing you down on the roads, let us know. Give us a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, normally, if you've been listening to when CBC Radio and our morning shows out on location for our community studio, we might look for a cafe or a restaurant. But here at Point Douglas, it was immediately apparent how important schools are to this community. So we set up here, as I mentioned, at Norquay School. We're right in the entrance here on Lusted Avenue, where Colin Bruce Smith is the principal. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
And just a stone's throw away from here, really, on the other side of Euclid is the Gonzaga Middle School. That's an independent school that provides education for children specifically from low-income families. Rex Ferguson Baird is the principal, and he's here too. Good morning. Thank you both for being here. Appreciate it. So, Colin, I know you've been here for a couple of years now. What have you noticed, or how would you describe the role that Norquay plays in the community?
You know, Norquay School is one of the hubs of the community here. It's a safe place for our students and our community members to come. You know, we really do value the role we play in the community and the role that we play in supporting our community. So one of the things that our motto here at Norquay School is supportive community, strong families, and successful students.
And you're going to get bigger, right? Because how many students now, and what's happening with an expansion in school?
Yeah, so right now we have about 220 students here at the school, and Norquay School, just because of consultation with our community, we're expanding to house grades 7 and 8 here on the school as well to become a bit of a middle school. It's better to keep kids close to home, keep kids in the community, and really care for our children.
because it's a real pocket of a community. So people are going to think Point Douglas. I also want them this morning to think about Armstrong's Point, another old neighborhood on the other side of the Maryland Bridge. Some of these old neighborhoods, they literally are because the river, when you look at how the river moves, there's a point of land. So it's a real pocket of a community. You are serving, Rex, a different population, of course, Gonzaga, a newer school here. How do you adapt your programming for the unique needs of students in Point Douglas?
We're basically offering students an opportunity to come and get some additional support in terms of their academics, and then giving them an opportunity to learn about social justice and learn to walk alongside shoulder to shoulder with family members and community members.
You also have an extra long school day, is that right?
We do.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Sure. We start at 8 in the morning and we run until 4:45.
And what prompted that decision?
That's just an opportunity for kids to really dig deep into their learning, and gives teachers a longer day to connect and to build those relationships with kids.
So those are some of the things that are going on. In terms of programming itself in the classrooms, how much do you adapt sort of the lesson plans and the teaching that you do to reflect the needs, but also the identities of the students here in Point Douglas? Would you say, Rex?
Sure. We got about 85% of our students identify as Indigenous, and so we are always looking at ways of infusing truth and reconciliation into the teachings that we have. And we bring in guests, elders, we bring in community members to kind of bolster some of that education for the kids.
Yeah. How about you, Colin? What's it like here?
Much like Rex, our population there is about 80% Indigenous. So we do have, we're on a journey rather to say, like of reconciliation, sharing that with our students. Our students are on a journey of land-based learning right now. So really getting out and learning with the land, looking to see, just different ways of engaging our students to make sure that they're successful.
What does that mean in Winnipeg? I know we've done land-based learning, and we've actually visited some different areas for, we do a thing called Communities in Focus. So we're up at Fox Lake, for example. But here in Winnipeg for land-based learning, are they going, where do they go to sort of explore?
Yeah, so we typically try to stay within the neighborhood, but it's really good. We have Michael Jean Park just over at kind of the Oxbow and the river there. It's great to take the kids out there, have the kids see the nature, interact with nature. We tie it to our lessons every day. It's just really good to have the kids have that outdoor experience.
I want to ask you some serious questions because we've been doing a series on CBC right now about school attendance and about challenges for various reasons about getting kids back in school to attend, especially in Winnipeg 1. So what have you noticed about getting kids to come to school and stay at school here at Northway? Have you had challenges with attendance?
Yeah, so we have a really solid population of students that are regular attenders, and we do have some students that have challenges. We really have to weigh the reasons why. So a lot of it is poverty, not being able to get to school. Our families don't have vehicles. Sometimes school's a little far away. They go visit their relatives out of town. It's really hard to get back. But we're trying to break down those barriers to have the students actually come to school. So providing them with lunch, breakfast, and a snack every day, making sure our food programs are pretty robust. Also, engaging classrooms. If students are engaged in classrooms, they're having fun, they're learning, then they want to come to school.
Gonzaga, obviously a smaller population. I think you said 57 students, Rex. But how does attendance factor into your school?
That's a really big focus for us. So we actually pick up kids from the door and bus them to the school. And so we're running about 92% attendance every day. And if students aren't able to make it on the bus in the morning, we have staff that are dedicated to pick them up as well.
Got it. What about safety? I mean, this morning we're talking about safety around the concert hall. I can tell you every corner of Winnipeg that we've broadcast in lately is talking about safety concerns. What are you seeing in Point Douglas, and how might it affect the students?
In Point Douglas, I'll say, there's a bit of a stigma, but Point Douglas proper here, it really is a little bit of a safe community. People look out for each other. The neighborhood and the neighbors are great. There is obviously going to be some concerns. I think for the kids, they're here at school, they're having a great time. School is a safe place. So we try to make sure that Northway and Gonzaga, we're like the hubs of the community. We're in a little central strip, so that's kind of always been a safe place for our students.
What about you, Rex? Have you had safety concerns that you've had to address?
that we've had to address? Well, there's always safety concerns in in North Point Douglas, we, as Colin said, we have a really great infrastructure of solid families who are really trying to create a safe community.
Active, right?
That's right.
Yeah. The kind of people that go on their front lawn and say not here. You can feel that. I spent some time in this neighborhood now, but also over the years. That's true.
And so getting to know the neighbors is critical for the school, right? So we know all the neighbors around the building, and we interact with them. Our students go out and they'll clear snow in the winter, help the seniors, that kind of stuff. But we're also watching for those people who maybe are getting into some other things.
Got it. Just as a last question to both of you, and we'll start with you, Rex. What would you like to see change to help students in this neighborhood thrive? And it may be connected to whatever secondary plan from the city can do, or it may be connected to other resources. What would you like to see?
Well, there's a really robust, as we said earlier, park system in the neighborhood. And the community club down the way does a great job of keeping that area safe. If the city could put some lighting resources in, or maybe some additional patrol areas so that they can supplement the community walks that happen, that would be great.
Okay. How about you, Colin?
You
know, I think about affordable and accessible housing in the neighborhood here, just to make sure that, you know, it's safe and appropriate for everybody. The other thing is Point Douglas is a bit of a food island. We don't really have a grocery store or anywhere for our families to shop. So it's really important that, you know, in the future, maybe some small light retail would be here just for our families to have affordable food.
Thank you both for being here. We're going to hear a lot about Food Island. We're going to hear a lot about affordable housing, transportation, and also someone who says, how about a 24/7 youth space drop-in that would be right in this pocket as well. That's all still ahead. But thanks for kicking off our show, principals.
Awesome. You're welcome. Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm going to send you back to the office. I've been waiting to say that for a while. Rex Ferguson-Baird, the principal of Gonzaga Middle School here in Point Douglas, and Colin Bruce Smith, principal of Norquay School, and that is where we're broadcasting from this morning. Stay with us. You're on CBC.
Every company dreams of doubling its profit. It's almost impossible to do. Yet, some companies do it just by tweaking one tiny thing. Or coming up with a really catchy jingle.
Flop, flop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is.
Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. How companies double their profits. On Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
6:24 a.m. is the time right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us. We have a community studio this morning. We're at Norquay School at 132 Lusted at Euclid today as we explore Point Douglas. Across the city, the weather is much like it is out the school window here. The sky is starting to clear. It feels crisp and a little breezy out there, but it is cloudy. It's 11 degrees after some overnight rain, and it's going to be windy today, and a high of 15 degrees in Winnipeg. If you need us on the commute, Dylan Longhurst is on the phone picking up those calls. 788-3093 is where you can reach us. Well, next on the show, let's turn back to some news that is making national headlines. Grassy Narrows, you might know, is a community near the Ontario-Manitoba border. And this week, their leaders were in Toronto launching a lawsuit against both the federal and Ontario governments. So the roots of this issue go back to the 1960s, when mercury from a paper mill was dumped into their river system. A recent study showed that the problem started years ago, persist in the community today. So to talk about the lawsuit, which by the way is still to be tested in court, Laura Glowacki's with us. She's a lawyer and co-counsel for the Grassy Narrows First Nation, and she's in Vancouver this morning. Hi there.
Good morning. It's Lisa Glowacki.
I apologize to you for getting your name incorrect. So can you tell us what the allegations are being presented in this lawsuit?
Sure. Grassy Narrows is alleging that the government have allowed industry to contaminate the environment that they rely on for their food and their treaty rights, and that the harm has been perpetuated for decades, and they have suffered health harms and harm to their community and their economy and the environment. And they are alleging that the government has breached its obligations to protect Grassy Narrows treaty rights and their health.
What is the community specifically asking from them, both the federal government and the Ontario provincial government?
First and foremost, they're asking for the harm to the environment and to their health to stop. So that requires two things. It requires the governments to regulate industry differently to prevent the harm rather than perpetuate it. And it requires remediation of the river. So they're seeking orders from the court that require active remediation. And then they are also seeking compensation to allow them to recover their health and their lives and economy.
What stands out for you about this case, and could it set legal precedent across Canada? Because here in Manitoba, people who live north, especially around South Indian Lake, who've long talked about what they feel is a challenge to their health because of similar issues with mercury in the water, might be really watching what's happening. So can you tell us a little bit about what stands out for you?
Yeah, what stands out for me is how long this has been going on and how stark the disregard has been by the government for the lives and the rights of Grassy Narrows. You're right that there's on the one hand, I think Grassy Narrows' history is somewhat extraordinary and the health impacts are specific to them. But there is a common, unfortunately, all too common experience by First Nations communities in particular of having to live with the interference with how they have lived on the land and supported their community and their economy by the effects of industry that's been regulated by government. So there's potential for precedent that requires the government to approach industry and how they regulate it differently to prevent harm instead of perpetuating it.
And then what about right now? How does the lawsuit address some of the ongoing needs? I know you mentioned some of this, but if you could elaborate what the community is asking for, what Grassy Narrows is asking for.
Right. Well, the litigation will take several years to develop, but the two parts of it, one being that action needs to happen to change the environment and how industry is regulated, that will support. Grassy Narrows needs a healthy environment in order to live healthy lives, so that needs to happen. And then compensation is meant to, among other things, allow people to access health care, live secure lives, rebuild community structures, address the social harms and the harm to the economy as well, so that people have better prospects for the future than they do right now.
I appreciate you outlining the highlights of the case. Thank you very much, Lisa Glowacki.
You're welcome.
Lisa Glowacki is a lawyer and co-counsel for Grassy Narrows First Nation. We reached her this morning in Vancouver. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and I want to apologize for getting my guest name wrong. I worked with Laura Glowacki many years, so obviously in my head I had her name. It is right now in Winnipeg, mostly cloudy and 11. If you need us on the commute, as mentioned, 788-3093. We have business news coming up. Yesterday, a lot of people were leaning in, especially if you're looking to buy a home. The Bank of Canada did cut its key interest rate for the first time in more than 4 years. So what does it mean for consumers? We're going to walk through that with Crystalie Ramlakan, who will be here with business news after your CBC News. And I want to open up the listener lines to a question. Now, we're live in Point Douglas this morning for our special broadcast, but my question actually has to do with something that you're about to hear on the news. We're about to hear in the news some safety concerns that have to do with the area around the concert hall. But as I alluded to this half hour, everywhere we've been in the city recently, in all four corners of Winnipeg, in all kinds of different neighborhoods, people are talking about concerns with crime, concerns with people who are struggling with addiction, concerns with needles in your neighborhoods, and some business owners in schools saying they have to lock the doors at times all times of the day. So these are all sort of shifts that we've noticed citywide, and we're wondering, what would you like to see as a Winnipegger to get ahead of this, the problems we're seeing? 788-3205. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. Get set for a windy Wednesday, damp and cool as well. The wind at times gusting to 60. Our high today is 15. Right now, we're at 11. We are learning more about a Winnipeg man who fled the scene of a fatal shooting by police in southern Manitoba. David Burling was arrested yesterday afternoon following a manhunt in southeast Saskatchewan. CBC's Josh Crabb reports.
29-year-old David Frank Burling has run from police before. He's been convicted 5 times for that. The most recent stems from an incident in June 2022 in the Portage-La Prairie area. Burling pleaded guilty and was sentenced this past January. Court heard he stole 2 ATVs and a trailer in Portage. He took off from police in a vehicle, leading officers on a chase, and collided with one of their cruiser cars. When he tried to get away again, police shot him. Burling kept driving until his car broke down and he was arrested. He was sentenced to 2.5 years, but with credit for time served, he had only 2 months remaining on his sentence. The judge heard what happened 2 years ago is normal behavior for Burling. Police arrested him in Springside, Saskatchewan Wednesday. RCMP say Burling left the scene after another man was fatally shot by Winnipeg police following a chase that started in the city before ending up in Otterburn and finally Niverville. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Manitoba Centennial Centre has started locking most of its exterior doors around the clock. The centre houses the Manitoba Museum and Centennial Concert Hall. People who use the parkade now have to buzz through security. Robert Olson, the Centennial Centre CEO, says most of the problems have occurred overnight.
There's been an uptick in the occurrences of drug paraphernalia, which we clean up on a regular basis, an uptick of encampment in and around our loading bay doors, which we're having to move out.
Olson says staff inside the building have been threatened and there have been numerous incidences of broken glass. The museum doors will remain open during museum hours, and concert hall doors will now open 2 hours before events. A Mountie in Portage-La Prairie has been acquitted of 2 assault charges. Manitoba RCMP Constable Tyler Hoogkamp was charged with assault and assault causing bodily harm in 2022 following an investigation by Manitoba's police watchdog. RCMP say a woman's arm and nose were broken while in their custody. Surveillance video shows Hoogkamp punch the woman in the face at the RCMP's Portage-La Prairie detachment in July 2022. He later pushed her. Manitoba Provincial Court Justice Patrick Sullivan concluded Crown prosecutors failed to prove both actions by Hoogkamp were an excessive use of force. He said his decision shouldn't be viewed as an approval of Hoogkamp's actions, implying he might have come to a different conclusion had prosecutors proved Hoogkamp's actions were excessive. Well, memorial services are underway in Normandy to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
More than 14,000 Canadians landed at Juno Beach among the roughly 150,000 Allied forces who came ashore in Normandy. There are no words to describe the immensity of the debt we owe you.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at Juno Beach Memorial, where he was joined by Prince William in honoring the Canadians who came ashore on June 6, 1944, just one of the services underway in Normandy. As an Israeli attack Thursday morning on a school, this morning on a school being used as a shelter in central Gaza has killed at least 30 people, 5 of them children, according to the Hamas-run health agency. The Israeli military saying the structure was targeted because it was believed to be a Hamas compound. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Construction of a new school in Sage Creek is in limbo. The planned K-8 French immersion school will serve Sage Creek and Bonavista in South Winnipeg. It was supposed to open September 2025, but the province says funding is delayed. Now the Louis Riel School Division has to consider whether to borrow millions to keep construction on track. Frank Capasso is president of the Sage Creek Residents Association.
This is a must that we have a school in Sage Creek because our kids have gone out of the area to go to school. But it's time that we give them more space and more room to be in Sage Creek.
Some parents want to know why an approved project is being delayed. The school division will vote on whether to get a loan later this month. And a live-action water gun game is gaining steam on social media and has caught the attention from everyone from students to police in Winnipeg. The game is called Senior Assassin. Students make groups and are randomly assigned another player to shoot with a water gun. If you get hit, you're eliminated. Abel Menasse says he and his friends are currently in a weeks-long game.
Just being able to do this with your friends. It's our last time being in high school together and stuff.
Winnipeg police are aware of others playing this game. Yesterday, they were called to a report of a male with a firearm. It was just kids playing with water guns. Constable Claude Chansey says they were playing the assassin game and there was no threat to public safety. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we are live in Point Douglas this morning with our show at Norquay School, and Abby Adiemi is back in our studio on Portage Avenue, Studio 15. What's the weather like right now, Abby?
It's cloudy outside. We're still at 11 degrees. We had some showers earlier this morning, but they ended, and for other areas still seeing the drizzle, it should be ending soon. And then you should expect a breezy day with a high of 15. Tonight, the skies will clear up, and then the breeze will be calming down. Heading west to Brandon, it is 10 degrees at the moment and mostly cloudy. Today will remain mainly cloudy, and the winds will be something you need to take into consideration as it's going to be windy. You'll be seeing a high of 18. Moving north to Thompson, it is 6 degrees at the moment with light rain. Expect periods of light rain and drizzle throughout the morning with some fog patches noticed here and there. And for folks in Thompson, you'll be seeing a high of 6 degrees. Further north in Churchill, it is 1 with light rain also, and you've been having periods of rain which will continue. Along with that, some fog patches. You'd see a high of 1 degrees today. We still have that rainfall warning in effect for Churchill and Tudor Lake, which is expected to taper off by Saturday morning. So because of the amount of rain you've seen, be cautious of possible localized flooding and washouts in rivers and creek, nearby rivers and creek. For Dauphin, it's 10 degrees and cloudy. Today will remain mostly cloudy with a chance of showers this morning and windy also. You see a high of 16. Gimli is at 10 degrees and cloudy. The Interlake region is also going to be seeing cloudy skies and showers and breezy conditions. High 14. Steinbach is at 11. Morris is at 13. Both going to be seeing windy conditions and cloudy and some showers also in the forecast. Highs 15s and 17. In Winnipeg, it is 11 degrees and we're heading to a high of 15.
All right. Dylan, it is early, but are we having any commute issues?
Yeah, just heard about Corden and Cambridge where the lights are out at that intersection. So you'll want to treat that blank intersection as an all-way stop until they are repaired. Again, Corden and Cambridge, lights are out at the intersection. If you see anything else in your commute, give us a call, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks, Dylan. Dylan Longhurst filling in for Corey because Corey's on remote here with us this morning at Norquay School. Grateful to be here. So this half hour on the show, I want to mention as we focus on this neighborhood today, the reason for being here is the city has announced they're going to do a secondary plan to move forward in Point Douglas with development and a new plan, a new future. So they want community members to weigh in. But what is a secondary plan anyway? What kinds of things can you weigh in on? We're actually going to talk to a city planner coming up in this half hour of Information Radio. So stay with us. We have the head and associate professor, in the Department of City Planning at the U of M that's going to be joining us in this half hour. Right now, it's time for business news. Crystal Ramlakan is with us as she is daily. Hi there.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So good news, I guess, if you're looking for a home in this country. The Bank of Canada has cut its key interest rates for the first time in more than 4 years. What does it mean for consumers overall?
Yeah, so the central bank lowered its rate by 0.25 percentage point to 4.75%. And the benchmark rate affects borrowing costs for banks, which means they can lower lending rates. So banks are generally very quick to move their prime rate higher in tandem with hikes. They've been a little less consistent on the way down, but some have already said they are lowering rates. So this will have an effect on variable rate mortgages. Fixed rate mortgages will not see a change until it's time for a renewal. But this small cut will not make a huge difference. For example, someone with a $600,000 25-year mortgage at 6% would save about $88 a month with this cut. So not a lot, but still some savings. Now, lines of credit are generally tied to prime rates, so borrowers should see some savings there too. And savings accounts and GICs have seen higher returns as rates have risen and could see that reverse. So banks generally move down savings rates to compensate for the lower lending rates they're offering. Tu Nguyen is an economist with assurance and tax consultancy firm RSM Canada.
They acknowledge that the economy has softened and cooled down, and globally there's also a lot of disinflation going on. So as long as inflation report this month comes out favorably, I think we could expect a rate cut in July as well.
Now, Governor Tiff Macklem did say it's reasonable to expect further cuts, but the bank is taking it one decision at a time. As you just heard there, most economists think another rate cut is coming in July, but markets aren't so sure, so we'll have to wait and see.
And before we look at the numbers this morning, you have a story about a cow that's worth $4 million. Is that a typo?
No, it is not. So she is the most expensive cow ever sold at auction and is part of Brazil's plan to put beef on everyone's plate. So Brazil has hundreds of millions of cows, but only one is watched over by security cameras, a veterinarian, and even an armed guard. She is the product of years of efforts to raise meatier cows. And the high price stems from how quickly she can put on a vast amount of muscle and how often she passes those characteristics on to her offspring. So prize winners like her are sold at high-stakes auctions. Eggs and semen are extracted from champion animals to create embryos to implant into surrogate cows to create prized cattle. Now, climate scientists agree that people need to consume less beef, which is the largest agricultural source of greenhouse gases and a driver of Amazon deforestation. But the cattle industry is a major source of Brazilian economic development, and so the government there is striving to conquer new export markets.
I wonder what you put in your resume if you're the armed guard for the cow. I guess that's what you put. What are the markets telling us?
In Europe, stocks are higher as markets anticipate the first rate cut since 2019 for the European Central Bank. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, stocks are on the rise. Japan is up. Shanghai is down right now. Hong Kong is up. Oil is up 26 cents to $74.33 US per barrel. Gold is up $5.53 to $2,360.86 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.02 of a cent to 73.04 cents US.
All right. Thank you, Crystal Lee.
Okay. Thanks, Marcy.
With CBC Business News, that's Crystal Lee Ramlakan. Well, the time right now is 6:43 a.m. on your Thursday morning. It is June 6th. And speaking of which, it is the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And if you're on the main network, we are not broadcasting our show on the main network this morning, and that is because there's a special D-Day programming today covered live for Normandy on CBC. And on the app, by the way, you can find some stories we've been doing with Winnipeggers who've been there, Manitobans who are speaking at D-Day ceremonies and celebrations and commemorations, rather, that are going on overseas. But we are live on YouTube this morning. Thanks for being with us there, or here on the radio on 89.3 FM on CBC. Well, as we've been mentioning, we're broadcasting today from Norquay School, which is in the heart of Point Douglas in one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city. And that means that Point Douglas is also home to some of the oldest businesses in the city. Just up the street from where we are at Norquay this morning, you're going to find a spot that's responsible for the, in my opinion, glorious smell of kubasaw and garlic wafting over this neighborhood for years. Every time the door opens. Janina Skrotapietz owns Metro Meat Products Limited. It's a classic corner store, literally right on the corner, that sells a little bit of everything at 121 Euclid, and it's been around for decades. I stopped by on Tuesday. And it smells like good kubasaw in here.
Of course it is. We're making every day something fresh.
How long have you been down here in Point Douglas?
43 years.
That long, hey?
Yes.
Yeah. So what have you, over the years when you think about the neighborhood, we're obviously here because we're looking forward. There's going to be a neighborhood plan.
We wanted some improvement here.
Okay.
Yeah. Because sometimes was really rough time.
Yeah. What's it like right now for you as a business owner in Point Douglas?
Well, it's still not the same, but we're still getting better.
Yeah.
Getting better, but it's not the same like used to be.
In what way? What do you mean?
When, sometimes our youngsters are not the same and they coming and just stealing stuffs, when they under the fluid of drugs or something. Yeah. But otherwise, we are okay.
Yeah. What do you like about your customers in Point Douglas? What has been the same that's kept you here all these years?
Well, because they're trying to buy some garlic sausage, and that's the famous to them. And then we're making some other stuff, pepperonis and jalapeno sausage, sweet chili.
You've had customers, I'm guessing, that have come here also from all over the city still, right?
Oh yes, all over, even from BC. Oh, wow. Victoria or Toronto, the Edmonton, they still coming here to get our kubasa.
How often are you dealing with the theft issues?
Maybe once, twice a month or something like that.
Okay. What do you hope they change in Point Douglas? Some people are saying housing, changing industrial things. There's all kinds of stuff. There's talk of a park that might happen here. What do you hope they change?
I don't know what they're going to change, but I hope it's going to be for better.
Theme we're going to hear through the morning. We already actually heard the principals talk about the nature and character of the residents here, and we'll hear from them in the next hour, many residents. This is a neighborhood, Point Douglas, full of people who are vibrant, very proud, and committed to the area, but they also are acknowledging some very real problems in Point Douglas. And they aren't all new issues. 22 years ago, residents right here fought to shut down a corner grocery store that was selling solvents at the time for people to abuse. And they turned it into a place of hope. I found myself there in that place this week as well. I'm outside the North Point Douglas Women's Center on Euclid here, and this place has really been a staple in this neighborhood of Point Douglas for a long time. We just had a gentleman walk by. He's ready to come back for drop-in hours for some coffee later. When I was in there this morning, I was watching some people gather to make drums as part of a crafting time that they're having. And I'm out here with the person who's right now running the center.
My title is Manager of Operations and Administration. My name's Kalita Benedictson.
Thanks for having me, Kalita.
Thank you for joining us.
How do you view this place's importance in the neighborhood? It's been here a long time.
It has, yep. We moved into this building, I believe, in 2002. So the center has been around for a really long time. I've only had the honor of being here for the last 5 of those years. But it's just a community hub. It's a place of safety and of welcoming and of love and respect, especially for folks who are the most marginalized, the most vulnerable. We see people from all walks of life and needs of many different kinds, and this little pocket of the North End is often forgotten on the east side of Main Street, and Main Street can be such a huge barrier that we need services here, and we have so few of them that we end up taking on quite a bit of them, and it's a lot, and it's an honor to be here. Yeah.
What kind of services do you offer the community that you, while it's an honor to be here, you might wish you had some supports around?
Yeah. Right now we are operating our daytime drop-in space. So that runs from 9 to 4 on weekdays except for Thursdays. We offer men's hours from 9 to 10 in the morning, 3 to 4 in the afternoon. So folks can come on in and access emergency food when we have it in stock. It's all donation-based, so it is hard to keep in the building. So food donations is always top priority. Financial donations for food is also priority.
You're feeding people. I saw laundry going in there. Yep. Is that a community service?
It is. It's completely free to use. We have 1 washer and dryer. We wish we had the space for more, so we can only accommodate 2 loads in the morning and 2 loads in the afternoon. So people can make appointments, come down and do a couple of loads of laundry, whatever they need to do. If people need to book a whole day, they can do that too.
What's the neighborhood like?
There's a lot of young families, lots of young kids. In about a half hour here, it'll be lunchtime, and we'll have school crossing guards at every intersection surrounding the center. There's another middle school just down the street, so there's a lot of family representation, a lot of youth representation. There are quite a few seniors. There's a senior center down Euclid.
It's a mix.
Yep, it's a pretty equal mix. We do see a lot of folks who are precariously housed or unhoused, so there's some pretty unique needs and vulnerabilities there that we have to account for.
It's one of the oldest neighborhoods in Winnipeg, and the city is doing a plan for the neighborhood now. What's your wish for what they're going to include in the plan?
I would love to see more affordable housing. I would love to see more food security supports. There are a lot of environmental concerns in Point Douglas, North and South Point Douglas, honestly, because of the industrial land, whether it is currently in use or if it's abandoned or defunct.
There's a lot to see those assessed?
Yeah, there's a lot of remediation that needs to happen to make sure that it's safe for the community. There's not going to be any adverse health effects for using that land. Prioritizing the needs of the most vulnerable is always top priority for me and for those of us at the center. So those are kind of the cliff notes.
Yeah, for sure. Anything to add, just thinking about the work that you do or where you hope the neighborhood goes?
There are so many strengths here and in the North End more broadly as well. But perception doesn't usually match that, unfortunately. And when people come down to actually spend time here, and Point Douglas specifically has a very special place in my heart. When it gets its hooks into you, you don't want to leave. There's just something beautiful and cosmic about the relationships and the love and connection that is here, and just the amount of strength and resilience and kindness and care. It's unlike anywhere else that I've spent time.
Thank you so much for telling us a bit of what you're doing out of the center.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Kalita Benedictson, Manager in Operations Administration at North Point Douglas Women's Center at Austin at Euclid, which you can pretty much almost see right out the window here from Norquay School, where we're broadcasting from this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are with CBC, and you heard me mention it in that interview. We're here because the City of Winnipeg is looking at a secondary plan. Consultations are going to be held in the coming months to help develop this. The city says it wants Point Douglas residents to help decide its future. But what's the past? What's the history in this area, and how could that impact future planning? Well, Richard Milgram is live at Norquay with us in the front foyer here, head of city planning at the University of Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. You and I were talking about how sort of the deep history here and the residential, and then you look at North and South Point Douglas, divided by the Disraeli, kind of presents some great opportunities, but also great challenges. From your planning perspective, what does that look like?
Well, it's a remarkable neighborhood in that it's very, as we've heard this morning, it's very defined. You know, it's surrounded on three sides by the river. It's got the Main Street on the west side. It's defined. It's as one of the kids said at the beginning. It's its own place, and it's its own place because it's also somewhat invisible. People don't come through Point Douglas very much. They go by it on Main Street. They go over it on the Disraeli. But it's an important place because it was really one of the first. It's where settlers arrived. It's here, we're here as a city because the railway's here. So the railway's fascinating because it's brought us together, but at the same time it's divided us because it's a physical piece of infrastructure that divides the north from the south in the city, and it divides the north and south Point Douglas, which are actually very different places. I mean, there's 2,500 people roughly living in North Point Douglas, and I think there's about 20 houses in South Point Douglas, and it's also early industrial land, so there's the challenges of what do you do in this sort of post-industrial period when there's a lot of environmental damage that's been caused by the industry.
When you think about the opportunities that might bring,
right,
especially the mix of what's here already, what do you see?
Well, it's also a very interesting moment in time because the point is being discussed by many different people for many different reasons. So there are many opportunities. Our Winnipeg, the overall development plan for the city identifies South Point Douglas as a major redevelopment site. So it sees it, particularly because of its very close connection to Waterfront Drive, as a place for future development.
It's always been sort of a place where they looked at that. They were going to put years ago, if people remember they were going to put the stadium in South Point Douglas?
Yeah, I was going to mention that too.
Yeah, and now just last week, the federal park announcement, a proposal for a federal park is right at that point. In the next hour, we're going to go and actually visit a building there that someone's looking at it potentially turning into sort of maybe mixed-use housing.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about housing and affordable housing here?
Sure.
And also development of affordable housing in neighborhoods, because some residents yesterday were saying to me, they have huge challenges because some of their houses are old neighborhood, and renovating those to modern standards are difficult. What does that mean for development in a neighborhood like this as you're trying to look at new units that might be affordable?
Well, I think you can plan for certain things to happen, but at the same time there have to be parallel programs and supports to help with some of these things. I mean, you can say, please build lots of affordable housing. But if developers and nonprofits and community organizations don't have the economic support to facilitate that, it's going to be very difficult to make it happen. So the plan is only one step, it's the vision, but other programs have to come in to support it.
You need investors to come to the table.
Well, and we need governments to come to the table. I mean, affordable housing isn't going to just happen because the private sector does it.
I want to ask you about the population here. There's actually, by residents, a large newcomer population, a large Indigenous population, obviously, and the school principals were saying their student populations are 80% Indigenous. How are those communities directly involved in advocacy and activism here? I mean, you see it everywhere.
Yeah, you do see it everywhere. I mean, there is a lot of very strong community organizations. For such a small place, there's a very high number of community organizations. They're very active. We've heard about the strength of the community this morning. We are right. It doesn't fall within the secondary plan area, but all of the Indigenous organizations that are at Maine and Higgins are right adjacent to here. I know that they're very active in trying to help and the people who are living in encampments along the rivers who are largely Indigenous. And that is one of the tensions in the neighborhood is how do you deal with or how do you address the fact that some people have nowhere to go except encampments. And at the same time, that's creating some perceptions, and I stress perceptions of safety issues because there are unhoused people living adjacent to a housed community.
Let me ask you as a final question. You mentioned the rail line. Now, I understand the big picture and longer term, there is some talk about relocating the rail line. How would that impact development in the short term, do you think?
Well, I think the big challenge for this secondary plan is to address short-term issues, but also recognize long-term opportunities. So, I mean, the proposal for an urban national park is a very long-term potential. Relocation of the rail line and the rail yards in the north end, you have to be working in the plan in two different timeframes. You have to think about the present, but in a present that doesn't hinder the future.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you very much for being here and helping us understand also the opportunities, but also some of the limitations of what this consultation process is going to raise.
Okay,
Appreciate
thanks
it.
for having me. Great.
That's Richard Milgram. He's been live with us here. He's Associate Professor in City Planning Department at the University of Manitoba as we come to understand the secondary plan for the Point Douglas neighborhood. We'll hear from the councillors for the area, by the way, in the next hour, so stay with us. Right now, 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Heather Wells is back in Studio 15, and she's here with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, we are learning more about a Winnipeg man who fled the scene of a fatal shooting by police in southern Manitoba yesterday. David Burling was arrested following a manhunt in southeast Saskatchewan. Police say the 29-year-old took off in a stolen vehicle after a man was shot dead by police at a gas station in Niverville early yesterday morning. We're going to hear more on that. As well, a live-action water gun game is gaining steam on social media and has caught the attention of everyone from students to police in Winnipeg. The game is called Senior Assassin. We'll hear about it in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much, Heather. Let's get into the morning commute details. They are quiet, but I will mention Corden and Cambridge. Lights are out there, treated as an always stop before that's addressed. Weather-wise, rain continues this morning through much of northern Manitoba. There's a rainfall warning for Tuduli Lake and Churchill that continues. Here south, we have a bright sky, but a cloudy sky, breezy, crisp kind of a morning out there. A high of 15 degrees, and it's going to be windy through the day in Winnipeg. And we may see some clearing into this evening, but showers lately have been more the norm. We had more showers overnight. Well, still ahead on the program as we continue to broadcast from here in Point Douglas. We will hear from the city councillors who represent this area. There's always been tension here between residential and industrial developments, rows of houses across the street from trucking companies, scrap yards, and yes, the rail line. How might a proposal for a vacant warehouse and a new city plan help bridge that divide? Stay tuned as we dig into more details of that. Also, students here at Norquay School, which is our studio today, did projects on why they love Point Douglas. We're going to hear from a few of them coming up. And we'll meet the food coordinator here at Norquay as well. Plus, to news of the day, we'll build on the issues Heather's been mentioning around the Centennial Centre complex, the concert hall, and the museum. Lots ahead.
On the current.
Many gallant men sailed from Portsmouth on D-Day, 1944, and did not return.
It has been 80 years since Canadian soldiers landed on Juno Beach on D-Day, and not many of those who were there are left to remember the occasion. We will hear from Canadians taking up the mantle to keep those stories alive coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We begin in France. Canada's national anthem is played at the service commemorating D-Day. It was 80 years ago today that Canadian soldiers, along with those of other Allied nations, stormed the beaches of Normandy, launching the liberation of Western Europe. Today, world leaders have gathered for a commemoration. CBC's Murray Brewster is at Juno Beach.
Only a few old soldiers were able to stand and salute. Many of the surviving Second World War veterans, bent but not broken by age, took in the moment of silence, remembering how this stretch of beach 80 years ago was anything but silent. This was a bittersweet commemoration, full in the knowledge that many of the soldiers here today will likely not return. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised that the coming generations will not forget the sacrifice, the lost and broken lives that delivered Western Europe from the grip of tyranny. And in a nod to the uncertain world today, he reminded those in attendance that democracy is still under threat.
It is threatened by aggressors who want to redraw borders. It is threatened by demagoguery. We must all continue to stand for democracy day in and day out. We owe it to future generations, and we owe it to the great women and men in uniform who sacrificed so much for our collective freedom.
Although unspoken, the reference is to the war in Ukraine. Prince William, standing in for his father King Charles at Juno Beach, spoke of the enduring legacy of the invasion.
The commitment to service displayed by Canadian troops is a great testament to the strength of the people of Canada. Canada and the UK continue to stand side by side, as we did in 1944.
Both the Prince and the Prime Minister spent a while lingering with surviving veterans, shaking hands and listening to their stories, their own way of saluting a generation at sunset. Marie Brewster, CBC News, Corsay-sur-Mer, Normandy.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he could provide long-range weapons to unspecified countries to attack Western targets. He says it would be a response to NATO allowing Ukraine to use alliance weapons against Russian territory. Putin said that would mark NATO's direct involvement in the war against Russia. He says Moscow reserves the right to reciprocate. This week, the U.S. and Germany authorized Kyiv to hit some targets on Russian soil using weapons they supplied. In Gaza, more than 30 people, including children, were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school building. Dozens more were wounded. That is according to the Hamas-run health ministry, and it says displaced people were sheltering there. Israel says the building was a Hamas compound. Julia Chapman has the latest from London.
As the death toll mounts, bodies are taken away from the scene. This man says he was asleep when the rocket hit the school in Al-Nusrat. He woke to find himself covered in rubble. Israel says its attack was targeted, killing Hamas and Islamic Jihad fighters who had carried out the October 7th attacks. It insists steps were taken to minimize civilian harm. Hamas denies that the school was sheltering anyone other than displaced civilians. Israel launched a new air and ground operation in central Gaza on Wednesday. It comes amid fresh efforts to agree a multi-phase ceasefire proposal. But Hamas on Wednesday said it wants a permanent halt to fighting, something Israel has rejected outright. Julia Chapman for CBC News, London.
To India and a ceremony marking the 40th anniversary of Operation Blue Star. The Indian Army opened fire inside one of the Sikh religion's most holy spots, an operation that left hundreds dead and deeply marked the state of Punjab. Our South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more from Amritsar.
The inner sanctum of the Golden Temple in Amritsar is full of faithful, here to commemorate a bloody day 40 years ago. June 6, 1984, when Indian troops stormed the holy site. To get to a militant separatist Sikh leader and his followers barricaded inside. Official figures put the death toll at around 400 people, but Sikh groups believe the number is in the thousands. The order to charge in came from then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, and those gathered here won't forget that.
The Indian state attacked a pilgrimage temple. They have used the tanks, commandos, full to kill Sikhs.
It changed Indian history in a time of militancy and violence in Punjab. Months later, Gandhi was assassinated by her Sikh bodyguards, and deadly riots broke out. The rancor still simmers years later, says 19-year-old Harshvinder Singh.
There is not much difference between the government of Indira Gandhi and the current government.
That's clear, he says, when some who are still advocating for a separate Sikh state called Khalistan are jailed under the National Security Act. He's talking about hardliner Amritpal Singh, who ran in the general election from jail and won. The son of one of Indira Gandhi's assassins also secured a seat in India's parliament. But for others at the temple like Prableen Kaur, today is not about politics, it's about remembrance.
To not let it happen again, because Sikhs are still a minority in this country and you never know.
Salima Shivji, CBC News, Amritsar.
Indigenous people whose unsurrendered land includes the city of Ottawa are getting their own dedicated space on Parliament Hill. The federal government is transferring a site across from the Peace Tower to the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. As Olivia Stefanovich reports, an agreement to do so comes after years of advocacy and tension.
This is actually a small gesture to some, but to our nation, to me, it's very big, it's huge.
Verna Polson's journey to this moment began 5 years ago in the shadow of the Peace Tower. The former Grand Chief of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation held a hunger strike on Parliament Hill. Polson went without food or water for nearly 2 days in the scorching summer heat to make a point on behalf of her people.
I would never change what I've did.
Polson says she took a bold stand because the Algonquin were overlooked on their own land, left out of plans by the federal government to create the first space on Parliament Hill for Indigenous people.
This is Canada's capital. This is on unceded Algonquin territory.
Gary Andanda Sangari is the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. He's now signed a new agreement to correct the government's decision and transfer a site among the parliamentary buildings to the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation.
We now have a space that is dedicated and really returning what is rightfully this of the nation back to the nation. And I think it's a very important moment.
The space is just a parking lot right now, but over the next few years, it will be transformed into a building celebrating Algonquin culture. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
An Ontario court will hear details today about the finances of Canada's self-styled crypto king. Aidan Platursky is alleged to have defrauded investors out of tens of millions of dollars, and the trustee overseeing his bankruptcy says plenty of that money is still missing. Thomas Daigle has more on what to expect today.
Long after he was forced into bankruptcy, Aidan Platursky was still posting online about expensive trips abroad.
I'll just pay everything in cash at the end. Is that okay?
Raising more questions about the $40 million he's said to have bilked from investors with the promise of big returns on cryptocurrency and foreign exchanges. Now the trustee overseeing Platursky's bankruptcy is set to tell a judge the 25-year-old should remain on the hook to further repay creditors. $4.5 million are still unaccounted for, including assets such as a $360,000 watch and hundreds of thousands more transferred for use on the video game platform Steam. Last month, Durham Regional Police Chief Peter Morera announced criminal charges of fraud and money laundering.
Mr. Platursky may have been attempting to solicit investors as recently as February of this year.
I'm retired and I'm a senior.
Diane Moore previously told CBC News about the money she says she lost to Platursky.
What he's done affected me horrifically because that $50,000 that I had I could use.
The self-described crypto king will be back before another judge soon. After today's hearing, he's scheduled to appear in court on those criminal charges next week. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
This area is going to change. I've been saying it for years, and I've been waiting for it to change. And I told the principal, I said, once this area gets to be where it should be, because this is a very historical area, I said, then I'll retire from the school. Probably, I don't know, another 5 years maybe. They won't let me retire. The kids won't let me retire. Well, hi, I'm Sandra Eichwalder, and I'm the food coordinator at Norquay School. And you're listening to Information Radio, live from Point Douglas, here on CBC Radio 1.
Yeah, Miss Sandra's already up this morning. You might be seeing her on YouTube having a listen to herself introducing our hour. We are at Norquay School, 132 Lusted at Euclid, and we're doing a feature on Point Douglas today. This area is getting a secondary plan from the city, so that means residents here are being asked to give input to the city about what they want to see the future be. So this hour on the program, there has always been tension here between residential and industrial developments. There's rows of houses across the street from trucking companies, scrap yards, and a rail line. There's North and South Point Douglas separated by the Disraeli Bridge. So how do you put all that together? We're going to hear about a proposal for a vacant warehouse that could be housing. We're also going to hear from some students at Norquay School. They did projects and why they love Point Douglas. So stay tuned for all of that and more. Right now, though, let's go to News of the Day with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, the suspect arrested after yesterday's cross-border manhunt has run from police before. 29-year-old David Frank Burling was arrested in Springside, Saskatchewan yesterday. That's just northwest of Yorkton, Saskatchewan. And it follows a police chase that started here in Winnipeg and led officers to Niverville, where police shot and killed a man. A woman was arrested at that scene, and investigators say Burling then took off in a stolen vehicle. We're going to hear about some of his prior convictions coming up. As well, the Manitoba Centennial Centre has started locking most of its exterior doors around the clock. The centre houses the Manitoba Museum and Centennial Concert Hall. We'll hear what's been happening around that area coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
And to build on the news and to have more on the news of the day, we're actually going to hear from Bartley Kivas this hour on that story about those locked doors. And I'd love to get listener lines about what you want the city to do to get ahead of these issues in Winnipeg that are happening in all kinds of neighborhoods. People saying we have to lock the doors. We don't want to. We heard that in Osborne Village. People saying that they're picking up more needles in different places as well. Just overall more crime and more challenge. 788-3205. Please call our listener line to weigh in. Well, Abby Adeyemi is here with the weather. Abby, can I share something that's going on today?
Oh, please do.
All right, so they're pretty excited here at Norquay School because all of the students here and a lot of students across Winnipeg School Division are going to be celebrating over a Tech Walk today. Today is the Winnipeg School Division's graduation powwow. So they need good weather. What are they going to get?
Good weather. I'll just tell you it's going to be windy, and I'm sure the kids will be fine if it's just an extra touch of the breeze. I think that's what they're going to be getting right now.
All right, not going to pour on them. That's good.
No pours. It's some showers now, but it's not really something too serious. It's 11 degrees in Winnipeg, and that's what it looks like the most of the province. 11 scattered all over the province as I see right now. Mostly cloudy also. We started the day with a few showers, which will be ending this morning. After that, it's going to be mostly cloudy, a few scattered showers again later in the day. Expected to be a breezy day for the kids that will be out and about. Just brace for that, and we'll be seeing a high of 15. For tonight, the skies will clear up in the evening, and then the breeze will calm down, becoming light after midnight. Just once again, I just want to talk about that rainfall warning we have in effect for to the Lake and Churchill. And Churchill has already seen 24 millimeters of rain. To the Lake has seen 61 millimeters. Both areas expecting 10 to 20 and 30 to 50 over the same period of time, and it's expected to continue into Friday, but should be tapering off by the end of Saturday morning. And residents advised to watch for possible localized flooding in low-lying areas and be cautious of potential washouts. Once again in Winnipeg, we're expecting a mix of showers, clouds, a windy Wednesday. It's going to be damp and cool, and as well as the winds at times it's going to be gusting all the way to 60. Our high for today is 15.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
The commute's been pretty good so far. Anything new to report, Dylan Longhurst?
No, it's been pretty quiet. We haven't heard much on the commuter line so far this morning. Did hear about Corydon and Cambridge, that intersection. Lights are currently out, so you may want to treat that as an always stop. You will want to treat that as an always stop if you come to a blank intersection, of course, until they are repaired. So keep that in mind if Corydon and Cambridge is on your commute today. Anything else you're seeing out there, however you're getting around, give us a call, 204-788-3093.
Time right now is 7:15 and a nice bright sky out there. It was already bright actually at 4:30 this morning, so it really does signify the time of year we're in here in June. Just a reminder that there's special programming on CBC this morning, and that is why you wouldn't have seen our show in the last hour on the main network. Special programming for D-Day. Next on the program, the reason for us being in Point Douglas is news that a secondary plan's in the works for the neighborhood. Now, it's one of the oldest spots in the city. It's been waiting for a development plan for a very long time. Two city councilors represent Point Douglas, and I asked Ross Eady and Vivian Santos to meet me at a spot in this neighborhood that is representative of their hopes for the next steps. Right on cue, the train's going by.
Welcome to North Point Douglas. Councillor Eady represents the north side of the railway track of Sutherland, and I represent the south end side of the railway tracks.
How do you feel about the fact that there's going to be a plan for Councillor Santos for this area?
I'm very excited. It's been a long time coming. I would say maybe a decade's worth of waiting for some form of plan. So I'm very happy that Councillor Eady and I are working together on what could happen in these two communities that so desperately need new housing units, changing the use of the land to more of a commercial mixed-use residential instead of industrial, which is what we're seeing today is a lot of industrial land that is underutilized and needs some remediation and TLC.
You were saying, Councillor Eady, we just passed a pocket of Point Douglas that it's been gentrified a little bit. There's been a bit of a change. And yet where we're standing and looking up at is the Brown Rutherford Wood Specialties. That's what it says on the side, this building. It's kind of one of those classic old industrial buildings. Why did you bring me here?
Well, I brought you here. It's a huge lot, and we're going to integrate housing with industrial because Brown and Rutherford's property is being purchased by a group. They put in a preliminary application to show what their ideas are for it. And so what they're talking about is they're going to renovate the warehouse building that's here. It used to be warehousing wood and selling wood and cutting wood, but they're going to add a couple of more buildings with housing and all that kind of thing, because this is a huge lot all along the river. They own right to the riverbank. They're going to have green space. They're going to have some commercial and art space, but nobody can do anything along Sutherland here until we get this plan development overlay and then also the secondary plan.
So this neighborhood plan we're talking about overall is really going to provide a roadmap for hopefully a lot of future development for Point Douglas.
Absolutely, on this side and again on the south side. Yeah. As it proceeds, you heard from the proposal to create a federal park at the point. On the other side of the tracks is the actual point. This is where Winnipeg began, right here at the point.
We're looking back to the Brown Rutherford building. I'm looking at sort of that classic warehouse, very reminiscent of like the early buildings in the Exchange District, speaking of the early days of the city, and beautiful windows. I can imagine the loft spaces once they're developed and looking over the river.
There's many warehouses close to Annabelle and Higgins. None of them are developed yet.
Not for housing.
Not for housing. I think the issue is with the South Point Douglas area, it is all industrial land. There's maybe about 80% of it is industrial, and the land is zoned that way, and about 20% are residential on the other side of Higgins, closer to the river. So the trouble is when you're wanting developers to come in and convert these warehouses, some old warehouses that are good on the outside but need to be torn from the inside, they can't change that into lighter commercial or residential units. They have to apply to do variances and change the use of the land, and it becomes quite expensive actually when I've had several meetings with developers. And then we talked about implementing a secondary plan. And so, fast forward to here we are today, moving forward with a secondary plan that's going to move the needle on some housing development that's so needed for this community. Because people want to be close to downtown, close to the new BRT line on Sutherland.
Having rapid transit coming down here, that opens up opportunities for lots of multifamily, bus-oriented development and that sort of thing. So that will also be an excellent opportunity. And a lot of people were very excited in North Point Douglas when they decided to run it down Sutherland rather than down Higgins.
Now, South Point Douglas. What are your hopes specifically for that pocket when you think about the pocket you represent?
Yeah, it's a different landscape. So what I envision is a multitude of almost everything: commercial, mixed use, residential, high rises near the point by the river overlooking the beautiful Red River, something to deal with a lot of reconciliation with the First Nations people, because the land, does originally belong to them, and so can we incorporate something like that, and as well as affordable units. I know there is definitely interest in building another tiny home village on Higgins, similar to what they built near the Thunderbird House, but you can't do that, right? You need to have the secondary plan. But we want to hear from the residences first. I know there's some concerns about, high rises and multi-families and gentrification, but I think we can come with a really good balance between the two and have a really good plan to vote on next year.
I would just point out one other thing, though. Main Street is not going to be part of that plan. It's part of what's coming up. They call it the mixed corridor or corridor PDO that's being developed. But you know what? This is a long-term thing for the neighborhood to change, right?
Yeah.
And for example, even if you have a secondary plan, Western scrap is grandfathered in there, and a lot of people don't want the Western scrap, that kind of industrial. So also you have to look at, some of it will still remain industrial. So how intensive in industrial? I believe just across the street over here there's like a trucking operation. That's not really causing any real serious harm to the neighborhood.
It's all being looked at.
Would scrap yards be allowed? Probably not.
How do you make sure that it results in change? Because that's, I guess, the worry, is that you go through the process and then you don't actually see the change in the neighborhood, Councillor Santos.
Yeah, that could be a concern, but I don't have that feeling, because I've met with so many of the people who own these properties that are looking to revitalize. They are waiting for a secondary plan, so they're willing to jump on some new development right away. From what I'm hearing back from the community, it's time for change. They're looking for some remediation of the land that remains industrial, right? We have to look at that.
So the city's job is to make sure there's a plan in place. The conversion will happen when the private sector developers decide that it's worthwhile to invest in the properties around here.
So it's very, very exciting. And I wanted to add on to another thing that I forgot to mention about when we're looking to remediate some of the land. I'm going to be pushing for the city to develop a TIF finance policy to allow, so that it can alleviate some of those costs as well, because we know remediating the soil is a very hefty price. And I'm just really excited that we're finally here at this juncture, together with council.
That's Point Douglas City Councilors Ross Eady and Vivian Santos. We met on Tuesday here in the neighborhood. They couldn't be with us live at Norquay School this morning in Point Douglas. They're in Calgary at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference. You can go to winnipeg.ca to weigh in with your thoughts on the secondary plan. And of course, that's the reason we're here broadcasting at Norquay. So more still to come. Right now, it is 7:23 a.m. ahead of morning sports on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa with Corey Funk on location. Thanks so much for joining us here on 89.3, 990 a.m. Or on YouTube this morning. Good morning. You can see the Norquay Eagles logo right beside me if you're watching on YouTube. Well, time for a touch of music. As he grows older, Coleman Hell says he's seeing that happiness isn't something to arrive at. It's part of the journey. Here's his tune, Joyride.
Driving down a dirt road in your mama's car. Find a place to park and let the engine run, so we can talk about the future. We'll push up Beamer with the top down, yeah, let's ride. The lies that we were sold, we can't return them, no. But they don't mind growing old. On your passenger side, stepping on the gas. Even if we crash, I would feel no pain and just enjoy the ride. When I'm with you, it's a joyride. Drives me crazy every time. Singing me love sick lullabies. Cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride. Drives me crazy every time. Singing me love sick lullabies. Cut the brakes, my ride or die. Never looking back now. Leave it all behind. I just wanna ride until the sun goes down. And when the stars come out, we'll crack up windows. stepping on the gas. Even if we crash, I would feel no pain and just enjoy the ride. When I'm with you, it's a joyride. Drives me crazy every time. Singing me lovesick lullabies. Cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride. Drives me crazy every time. Singing me lovesick lullabies. Cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride. Drives me crazy every time. Singing me lovesick lullabies. Cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride. Drives me crazy every time. Singing me lovesick lullabies. Cut the brakes, my ride or die. When I'm with you, it's a joyride.
Little Joyride, that's the name of the tune from Coleman Hell. His new album of the same name, by the way, is out now. You're on CBC. It's 7:26 a.m. and it is June 6th, the anniversary of D-Day. Thank you so much for joining us here. Well, Scott Regehr is off today, but Paul McGowan's in with sports.
Good morning. Let's start in the CFL, where Week 1 officially starts tonight. The Blue Bombers are taking on the Montreal Alouettes. Given that the last time these two teams met was the Grey Cup that saw the Bombers lose, head coach Mike O'Shea was asked whether he views this as a chance for revenge against Montreal.
No. Game 1. Game 1 against a good Montreal team. So,
have you thought much about the Grey Cup that was, or do you just kind of let that go?
I think at the beginning of the offseason you do, and then as you are looking to investigate various things in the offseason, you have to, but not much since then.
I'd argue fans might view it a little differently. In terms of who the Bombers will be starting, no surprises. Zach Collaros will be under center. Canadians Brady Oliveira and Nick Dembski will be in at running back and slot back, respectively. Willie Jefferson anchoring the defensive line. Maybe the only person missing is linebacker Adam Bighill. The future Hall of Famer is still dealing with an injury he sustained during training camp. 7:30 kickoff from Princess Auto Stadium. To soccer now, where the Canadian men's team has maybe its biggest match ever as they take on the Netherlands in preparation for the Copa America, which starts later this month. Now, outside of the World Cup, this will be the first time in 4 years that the Canadians have faced a European opponent. It will also be the first match for new head coach Jesse Marsch. Now, for Marsch, well, he would like to win against the Dutch. He's more focused on how the team adapts to his new system of play.
We know that the opponents are difficult and that it won't be always so easy to do exactly what we want to achieve in these matches, but we're trying to lay a foundation for certain things that we think are important and basics for how we want to build things moving forward, and we'll see who's able to apply them.
One big change of the Marsch regime was who was sitting next to him at the press conference. Star player Alphonso Davies. During the 2022 World Cup, Canadian media had to press Canada soccer officials to make Davies available. Now, though, Marsch puts the Edmontonian front and center, said that he's challenging Davies to be a leader, not only on the pitch, but off of it as well. Kickoff at 2:45 Eastern, 11:45 Pacific. Finally, we now know our Final Four in both the men's and women's draw at the French Open. On the men's side, it will be Casper Ruud against Alexander Zverev in one semi, while new world number one Jannik Sinner takes on fellow wunderkind Carlos Alcaraz in the other. Both of those matches go tomorrow, but today we'll find out who the finalists will be in the women's draw. Iga Swiatek takes on Coco Gauff in the early match. Now in the late draw, a couple of upset winners. Italy's Jasmine Paolini will take on Russian Mira Andreeva. Paolini got by former Wimbledon champ Elena Rybakina to make this semi. The bigger upset, though, was the unseeded Andreeva beating world number 2 Arina Sabalenka. Andreeva spoke about how an insect sighting on the court helped inspire the victory.
In the last game on our serve, I saw a ladybug on a clay. I was like, well, I have to save it. So I picked it up. After I just tried to not to think about that, but I was like, this could be a sign as I won the game and the match. So that was a nice moment for me.
That sounds more like a scene out of a Wes Anderson movie than a scene from the French Open. I'm not sure if any ladybugs will be making appearances on the clay today. For those wondering, by the way, there is one Canadian left in Paris. North Bay, Ontario's Robert Shaw and his partner will play for a spot in the quad wheelchair doubles final later this week. That's your look at sports. I'm Paul McGowan.
And I'm Marcy Marcusa, live at Norquay School. Our special broadcast continues. We're going to hear from some of the students about why they love Point Douglas. But your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's still 11 degrees in downtown Winnipeg. It is windy. Throughout the day, northwest wind 40, gusting to 60, keeping us to a cool high of 15. We are learning more about a Winnipeg man who took off from the scene of a deadly shooting by police in Niverville, just south of Winnipeg, early yesterday. David Burling was arrested in the afternoon following a manhunt in southeast Saskatchewan. CBC's Josh Crabb reports.
29-year-old David Frank Burling has run from police before. He's been convicted 5 times for that. The most recent stems from an incident in June 2022 in the Portage-La Prairie area. Burling pleaded guilty and was sentenced this past January. Court heard he stole 2 ATVs and a trailer in Portage. He took off from police in a vehicle, leading officers on a chase, and collided with one of their cruiser cars. When he tried to get away again, police shot him. Burling kept driving until his car broke down and he was arrested. He was sentenced to 2.5 years, but with credit for time served, he had only 2 months remaining on his sentence. The judge heard what happened 2 years ago is normal behavior for Burling. Police arrested him in Springside, Saskatchewan Wednesday. RCMP say Burling left the scene after another man was fatally shot by Winnipeg police following a chase that started in the city before ending up in Otterburn and finally Niverville. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The complex that houses the Manitoba Museum and Centennial Concert Hall is now locking most of its doors around the clock. People who use the parkade now have to buzz in through security. Robert Olson, the Centennial Center's CEO, says there has been an uptick in discarded needles and homeless encampments outside the complex, especially overnight.
We're locking up our garbage bins behind fences now because they've been routinely gotten into, and we're worried that somebody might fall asleep inside the bin, and who knows where they would go after that, after the bin is cleaned.
Olson says staff inside the complex have been threatened, and there have been numerous incidences of broken glass. The museum doors will remain open during museum hours, and concert hall doors will now open 2 hours before events. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. A group of students from Micasso School from Cross Lake, Manitoba are at D-Day ceremonies in France. A number of Indigenous soldiers were buried in the Canadian War Cemetery in France who were from Cross Lake and stormed the beaches 80 years ago. Grade 10 student Jadis Colombe was part of the ceremony just in the last hour, reading from A Commitment to Remember in Cree.
To remember. Basically to remember and to know that Indigenous people could be heard too. I was able to let them hear our language, due to my voice.
Colombe didn't expect to do the reading, but stepped in when the student who was supposed to do it lost their voice. Colombe says she worked with her teachers last night to ensure she knew the words in Cree. A Mountie in Portage-La Prairie has been acquitted of 2 assault charges. Manitoba RCMP Constable Tyler Hoogkamp was charged with assault and assault causing bodily harm in 2022 following an investigation by Manitoba's police watchdog. RCMP said a woman's arm and nose were broken while in their custody. Surveillance video shows Hoogkamp punch the woman in the face at the RCMP's Portage-La Prairie detachment in July of 2022. He later pushed her. Manitoba Provincial Court Justice Patrick Sullivan concluded Crown prosecutors failed to prove both actions by Hoogkamp were an excessive use of force. He said his decision shouldn't be viewed as an approval of Hoogkamp's actions, implying he might have come to a different conclusion had prosecutors proved Hoogkamp's actions were excessive. Parents in Sage Creek want to know why the province is delaying funding for their new school. The planned K to grade 8 French immersion school will serve Sage Creek and Bonavista in South Winnipeg. It was supposed to open in September of 2025. The Louis-Riel School Division is now considering whether to borrow millions to keep the construction on track. Brigitte Dupuis-Honra has a son in grade 3. She hopes the school is built in time for him to complete grade 8 in their own neighborhood.
Because Sage Creek can't service all the children who reside here. So it's really important to
continue building this facility. Like, the plan was to have it built to the maximum capacity possible, so no children are sent away to other areas.
The province says it is not able to provide a detailed information on the funding because of a by-election blackout. Well, it has gained steam on social media and is catching the attention of many, including Winnipeg Police. It's a game called Senior Assassin. Players join a group and are assigned to an opponent they have to hit with a water gun. Some players are using an app to form groups for the game, but grade 12 student Matthew Howie in Winnipeg says the location sharing aspect isn't for everyone.
I learned that you had to have your location on during it. I don't really want people that I don't know knowing where I live and kind of showing up at my house, my place of work.
Yesterday, Winnipeg police were called to a report of a male with a firearm. Turns out it was just some kids playing with water guns. Constable Claude Chansey says they were playing the assassin game and there was no threat to public safety. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather Wells. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live on location at Norquay School this morning, and we're here because we're looking at the wider Point Douglas neighborhood and hearing more about what's going to be needed here and what residents have to say about that, because there's a secondary plan from the city. So we have more this half hour. But we want to plug into what's happening with the weather. Abby, it's so funny because I can hear you in my headphones down the line. You're, of course, in Studio 15 on Portage Avenue. And I'm looking out the window, and it seems like it's brightening up, but I heard you actually cheer and say, there's sunshine.
Yeah, the sunshine.
So you've got some sun downtown?
Yeah, it's made its appearance. I'm sure it's making its way to you as we speak. But right now, looking out the window, it's sunny. We're seeing some sunshine outside after that rain showers we saw early this morning. It will be breezy though. We'll be seeing a high of 15 today in Winnipeg. Currently, it is 11 degrees. This evening, the skies will clear up, and then that winds that I talked about is going to become light after midnight. Heading west to Brandon, it is 11 and mostly cloudy. You should be expecting mainly cloudy skies today with windy conditions and a high of 18. Moving north to Thompson, 3 degrees at the moment. We're seeing some light rain, and the periods of rain or drizzle with fog patches should be leaving you this morning, but then you'd have some breezy conditions to deal with, and you'll be getting to a high of 6. Further north in Churchill, 1 degrees at the moment, and it's misty. Expect periods of rain and drizzle and fog patches and windy condition. And don't forget, we have that warning for Churchill and Todo Lake. It should be tapering off by Saturday morning. Just watch out for localized flooding. Dauphin is at 11 and cloudy. Expect cloudy skies today. A chance of showers later this morning, and the breezy conditions to go with that. High of 16. Gimli also at 11 and cloudy. The Interlake region will be cloudy. A slight chance of showers and breezy conditions also in the forecast for you. High of 14. Steinbach 11 and cloudy. Expect cloudy skies with a chance of showers also and breezy conditions. High 15. And final Morris 12 degrees. It's cloudy over there for the Pembina Valley region today. It's going to be mainly cloudy. A chance of showers this morning, and the breezy condition would come with that. High of 17. But here in Winnipeg, it is 11 with some showers already ended this morning. We're seeing a sunny break. It's going to remain breezy throughout the day, and we'll get to a high of 15.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Now, traffic this morning has been pretty good. Dylan Longhurst is covering for Corey, who's here on location with me. Dylan, what are you hearing?
Yeah, not hearing much on the commuter line. Haven't heard many calls saying of any surprisingly slow spots. Want to mention northbound St. Mary's approaching the downtown. You're losing the northbound curb lane just by Enfield there. That's pretty slow going right now. Expect heavy traffic and delays if that's on your normal commute today. Anything else you're seeing, give us a call. 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks very much, Dylan. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and the show here is on location. I always like to call it our community studio when we get out, and we are at Norquay School. So Norquay School here in Point Douglas, and Norquay is 132 Lusted at Euclid. Pretty much just you drive right around the corner off of Main Street, and you find the school pretty quickly here. Surrounded by lush trees and riverside and lots of parks, and some wonderful students who call themselves the Eagles. You can see that on our YouTube stream. We're sitting in the atrium here. We're also surrounded by some student projects. Actually, in front of me, I can see a garden where they're going to be learning to grow different types of foods for this summertime. Well, one of the people here with me this morning is a student, and I'm so pleased he's here. His name is Colin Amos. He's in grade 6. Good morning.
Good morning.
So have you gone to this school since you were little? Like, have you been here since kindergarten?
No, I've been here since grade 1.
Awesome. So what do you like about Norquay? What's it like going to school here?
It really feels like my school.
Oh, I love that. How come?
Because you can you could really feel like you're here, like your friends are here.
You have a community here. Yeah. So I know that you guys knew we were coming, so you've been thinking a little bit about how to answer this question. What do you love about Point Douglas? So what do you love about your neighborhood?
Again, it just feels like home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a nice neighborhood. It feels small, but not really.
It feels almost like it's a little village pocket. That's how I describe Point Douglas whenever I'm here. I used to take Ukrainian dancing when I was your age at that church right over there around the corner, so I know it a little. My mom actually used to hang out in a park here. I don't know why she called it Banana Park. There's some kind of history there. Some listeners going to have to tell me why she called it that. But she used to love it. What do you like to do in the neighborhood with your friends?
Go to the park, play basketball.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Do you play a position or do you guys play 3-on-3? What kind of basketball do you play?
It doesn't matter as long as we're playing.
What would you like to see in this neighborhood that you don't have? So the city's making this big plan. They're saying dream big. Let's improve Point Douglas. What don't you have here that you would like to have as a young person, Colin?
I don't care about that much, but for the adults, better roads.
Got it. Oh, I love that. You're getting a high five. You're getting a high five for that. Early this morning in the first hour, what you don't know is that actually came off air. They actually said, can you get someone to fix the potholes around one of the roads here? Well, I'm grateful that you've been here with me this morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's nice to meet you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you too.
That's Colin Amos. He's in grade 6 here at Norquay School, weighing in about what he loves about Point Douglas. Now, let's remember that we're in North Point Douglas this morning. As you heard the city planner outline earlier this morning when we were he was on with us, Richard Milgram, who is, in the Department of City Planning at the U of M. He was talking about reminding us that there's a Point Douglas neighborhood plan. It actually includes North Point Douglas and South Point Douglas, which is divided by Disraeli Bridge and the railroad tracks. Here in North Point Douglas, there's a lot of residential properties. South Point Douglas, there's really only a handful of them. But one of the residents from that South Point Douglas neighborhood made his way over to Norquay School this morning to weigh in on our broadcast. So Herman Hola is with us. Good morning, Herman.
Good morning.
So you live in South Point.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what your hopes are for the future of your neighborhood and some of the concerns you've got down there as a resident.
Oh, I don't know. Let's talk about the concerns.
Okay, let's do that.
First of all, in my part of town, it's all zoned light industrial. Although there's a historical residential element that's always been there, which has been eroded over the years, partially because of the zoning. What's bothering us now, or me particularly, is the destruction along the riverbank along waterfront and down to Annabella. That's part of the bike path. I believe it's also the Trans-Canada Trail. There's so many trees that are being burnt. I mean, over the last number of years, there have been people coming there burning wires, not just in one place, but another place all the time, right next to a tree. They're leaving trash there. I used to go pick up all kinds of trash there, thousands of syringes. I'd clean up the campsites after they left. And it's just got to the point where I could go out with a couple of bags and come back with a shopping cart, but now they're bringing the garbage in shopping carts. And really no place to dispose of the stuff. I really don't know. It's the word that comes to mind is it's just very sad.
Yeah. Tomorrow I'm going to have a business owner on from Eliminator RC. They've been down on Higgins for a long time. They were raising some of the same concerns about the riverbank and what's been happening in the shift. What does it feel like to be part of an industrial neighborhood and be you're a minority because you're a homeowner, resident there? What would you like to see happen maybe to improve some of the concerns you've been talking about?
Well, there are some good things happening in the neighborhood. I mean, when I moved out there, there's like a little enclave there. We called it Artland. They were all artists. It was all, for the most part, owner-owned. Everybody owned their own residence. That's the thing. Now there's some houses have been destroyed. and nothing's been built because of the zoning. The industries are not really a problem. I enjoy being very close to the railway tracks. I don't mind the trains; they don't bother me.
You just want to see something done with the challenges that are happening with the social problems spilling out and what's happening on the river.
Yes, for sure. Because it got to the point where I was collecting police incident reports, and of course, every time you call 911, they say don't confront them, but you can't touch them. You can't touch them even if they've broken into your house or whether they're in your yard. Yeah. So. What are we supposed to do? I mean, we can talk to our councillor, but I mean, Point Douglas is a ward that goes, I think, almost to Route 90.
It's huge.
A lot of people don't realize how large it actually is. Well, our councillor has other issues, more than our little point.
We'll have to come visit you.
For sure.
Right in your part of this neighborhood. And we appreciate you coming to the North Point to talk about your concerns and weigh in. Thank you so much for being on CBC today.
Okay, well, thank you for having me.
This is our community studio. So Herman weighing in, just coming into North Quay School, heard we were here in his area, and obviously having some concerns in South Point Douglas. We're in North Point this morning across the tracks, all part of the same neighborhood plan for this part of the city. And we're at North Quay School. So that's Herman Hola with us this morning live. 7:46 a.m. We've got the sunshine now has arrived here. See some blue sky through the school window here and the trees rustling in the wind. Well, we are not just here live today, but we've been spending time in this neighborhood in preparation for our broadcast. And so Corey Funk actually spent a morning here at the school last week and spoke to someone who plays a very special role here. Corey, who'd you meet?
Yeah, I met Sandra Eichwalder. She's here already, very busy. She is the school's food coordinator. She's known to students here as Miss Sandra, and she's in charge of providing breakfast, snack, lunch, every day here at North Quay School. And I don't know if you met someone like this. She's that rare kind of person who you automatically just want to hug instead of shake hands with. We totally hugged when we met. And she's worked at the school here for a very long time. She's also lived here in Point Douglas for decades. I met her in the kitchen where a little girl in a bright blue dress and her support worker had just wheeled in a cart full of used plates and cutlery. And it became very apparent very quickly that Miss Sandra's role here at North Quay School goes well beyond food.
I love your outfit. Look at me. You gonna say good morning, Miss Sandra?
Good morning.
Thank you. You are looking lovely today. Thank you, sweetheart. All right. Thank you for bringing the cart, anybody. Good job. I'll see you later at lunchtime. She doesn't talk much. What we do every morning. To get her to be a little more sociable. This is our breakfast carts, and that young student, the young girl, she brings the cart back just to, we start communicating with her for her to say good morning and to talk more. And every morning it's the same thing. She doesn't want to say good morning to me, but I just make sure that she says good morning. I go, this is what manners are. It's just not books and reading and math and arithmetic and all that in the school. It's a lot to do with manners, respect, and not just respect of the elders, because I'm about the oldest one here. It's respect for each other and respect for themselves, and take pride in themselves that they can do that. And
So you're the food coordinator here, but do you also see yourself as an educator as well? It kind of seems like it just from that little interaction I saw.
I started in nursery kindergarten as an EA, and before that I was walking school bus. I used to walk around to the whole neighborhood and pick up kids to get them to school. And before that, I'm still a grandmother, and my four grandsons came to school and graduated out of here.
Okay. So you've got deep connections not only here at the school, but also in the neighborhood.
Yes, definitely.
So how long have you lived in this neighborhood in Point Douglas for?
Approximately 28 years. Yeah.
And how much has it changed in that 28 years?
When I first moved, actually, I lived right across the street on Lusted, which my house just sold. And it was a little rough, but being the person that I am, I'm very vocal. And when I say something, I want people to notice me. And I just let the rough ones know, see these children here? These are my grandchildren. Do not mess with them. And I had a rule with my grandkids also. There's nothing out at nighttime on the streets that you need to be there. And that was it. And they never were out later than 10 o'clock. When it got dark, they knew to come home. And these are my grandkids I'm raising. My kids are all grown. These are grandkids that I'm helping raise, yeah.
What do people get wrong about Point Douglas?
They get a lot wrong about the North End. because, yeah, it's a little rougher than, say, Wolseley and these other places, but they still have the same crime that we have. Ours is just on the news more than theirs is, and more pronounced about blah blah blah. And yeah, and we've got the homeless, which is unfortunate, but we're working on it. We're working on getting them somewhere to live. I'm also part of the Point Douglas Residents Committee, and I represent the school in that group. So, and we're working on getting some of these boarded up houses. Developers to buy them, open them up, clean them up, and get families in here. The more families you have, the better it is. And that's what I found about the street I lived on, Lusted. There was 4 houses that were rented out. Once those houses became private, this street became a very quiet street. And it's been a quiet street ever since.
So I know in the news recently, there's the city's looking into some kind of changes in terms of land use in the area. I imagine you must have some thoughts on that. What do you think about it? What would you like to see?
More housing for low income, and maybe something that could help these people, I hate to say, get off of assistance or get off of do partial assistance and get them back into the work group, and something for the young men to do, because they do need to work and have pride in themselves that they can financially set people up. But yeah, this area is going to change. I've been saying it for years, and I've been waiting for it to change. And I told the principal, I said, once this area gets to be where it should be, because this is a very historical area, I said, then I'll retire from the school.
So how far away from retirement are you based on the changes you're seeing right now?
Probably, I don't know, another 5 years maybe. They won't let me retire. The kids won't let me retire. Now I gotta get my hug from this one. Hey.
What do you love about Miss Sandra?
Her food.
Her food? She gives good hugs. You came here just for a hug, I see.
Yeah.
How many hugs do you get from Miss Sandra a day?
A couple.
I mean, I live right across from the playground, and if I am out with my dog, it's like, Miss Sandra. And I'm like, yeah, hi, I just saw you 10 minutes ago. But it's something that I do. I mean, when I'm driving around this area and doing my errands and stuff like that, and I see a student that's not acting properly, I will stop my car and I'll go, such and such, what are you doing? You know you're not supposed to do that. And they go, oh, sorry, Miss Sandra, it's okay. And then we'll talk about it. The next day I'll go, so how did it work out, when I saw you? And they'll say, blah, blah. And then I don't know, I just love I call them my kids. Because a community is someone that embraces every child in there. And my job in this school is to feed the stomach so the teachers can feed the mind.
Seems like you also feed the mind a little bit too.
Oh yeah, I do. A little bit. It's always teaching in this school, always. No matter what we do, it's teaching something for them.
Sandra Eichwalder, food coordinator here at Norquay School in Point Douglas, where we're broadcasting this morning in conversation with Corey Funk. Well, just before we get to news headlines, I actually want to give you a little bit more detail on a story that's been in the news throughout this morning. It is about the Centennial Center complex, home to the concert hall and the Manitoba Museum. Yesterday, saying they're going to lock down public access to its buildings. Robert Olson, CEO of Manitoba Centennial Center Corporation, spoke to Bartley Kivas about why.
You folks are now locking the building during the day because of just the issues that you've experienced. What kind of issues have you been dealing with in the last few weeks or months or maybe even years?
Well, we have been dealing with it on and off, through our 58-year history. But it seems like there's been an uptick in the occurrences of drug paraphernalia, which we clean up on a regular basis, an uptick of encampment in and around our loading bay doors, which we're having to move out. We're locking up our garbage bins because behind fences now because they've been routinely gotten into, and we're worried that somebody might fall asleep inside the bin, and who knows where they would go after that, after the bin is cleaned. Plus, they scatter the debris all over the place. These occurrences have a detrimental effect on attendance. Now, it's not a complete lockdown, obviously. We have to conduct our business. So during concerts, and you may have seen that in the email I circulated, but during concerts, the doors will be open 2 hours in advance of a concert to let anybody and everybody in. Hopefully the majority of them are people that have a ticket to an event. The museum, their operating hours are being accommodated. We are increasing security. We have invested significantly in additional security surveillance to try to mitigate some of this. Some of the incidents that we've been having are, constant glass being shattered for, who knows whatever reasons. And replacing glass panes in our concert hall is thousands and thousands of dollars. Since April 30th to June 3rd, I asked my security department to give me a recap, and we've had 16 incidences of where our security's had to interact with everything from aggressive, threatening behavior to our staff, which are now being compromised because as they're outside cleaning up, they're being threatened. We've just collectively made a decision that for the safety of our staff and for the safety of the people that are doing business at the Centennial Center, and I want to be clear about that partly because we just don't run the concert hall. We operate the Centennial Center for the Arts, which is the entire complex here, that we felt it would be best to restrict access.
So that's Bartley Kivas in conversation about one of today's top stories. He was in conversation with Robert Olson, CEO of the Manitoba Centennial Centre Corporation. We'll hear more about this and the challenges through the morning, and also their announcement yesterday. They're going to be locking most of their exterior doors. We're hearing this all over the city, Winnipeg. So why don't you weigh in on where you think we should go and how we should deal with things as a city? 788-3205. Heather Wells is here with headlines.
Good morning. Well, the suspect arrested after this week's cross-border manhunt has run from police before. That is what we're learning about 29-year-old David Frank Burling. He was arrested yesterday afternoon in a community near Yorkton, Saskatchewan, after that police chase that started in Winnipeg and led officers to Niverville, where police shot and killed a man. We'll hear more. And a group of students from a school in Cross Lake, Manitoba, are at D-Day ceremonies in France. A number of Indigenous soldiers are buried in the Canadian War Cemetery in France who were from Cross Lake and stormed the beaches 80 years ago. We are going to hear from a grade 10 student who was part of this morning's ceremony, reading from A Commitment to Remember in Cree. Those stories and more coming up at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather. In Winnipeg right now, out our studio here in Point Douglas, Norquay School's our studio. Blue sky, lots of sunshine. It's 11 degrees. It's going to be windy through the day and a high of 15. In traffic, police are right now on scene of Wellington and Coburn. Now, traffic is blocked in both directions there. Please update if you have anything to share, 788-3093. Well, as our broadcast continues, looking at Point Douglas, they call her Shelly Belly around this neighborhood. And during our interview, people were walking by, honking their horns. We'll hear why she loves Point Douglas, but also why she says what she thinks is needed here is a 24-hour youth drop-in. We also are going to hear from the head of the Residents Association here in Point Douglas and a developer who's looking at a big proposal to change a warehouse space into housing. Stay tuned.
On Q with Tom Power.
Our show is not typically the place to get the news until now. Huey Lewis will be here to talk about his new musical based on the music of his band, Huey Lewis and the News, touring Europe when he was 16, and the devastation of losing his hearing. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel-Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
This is World Report.
Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We begin in France with the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of D-Day. A lone piper with the Canadian Armed Forces band plays on Juno Beach. Canadian soldiers came ashore there June 6th, 1944. They were among the tens of thousands of British and American soldiers landing on the beaches in Normandy. The invasion was pivotal in stopping the Nazi regime and ending the Second World War. Leaders from the Allied nations are in Normandy this morning, along with the declining number of veterans. The CBC's Murray Brewster is at the Canadian Memorial Service. And Murray, what's been happening there this morning?
Marcia, we've had Prime Minister Justin Trudeau who paid tribute to the surviving veterans of D-Day who are present.
We remember your sacrifice. We remember your stories.
Now, there are only a few Second World War veterans seated here today in the front row, several of them in wheelchairs. And there was a really nice moment when the Prime Minister was greeted by D-Day veteran Honorary Lieutenant General Richard Romer. He was a fighter pilot on D-Day, and he gave the Prime Minister a really warm handshake and a grandfatherly pat on the cheek. Trudeau has been accompanied today by Prince William, and he is standing in for his father, King Charles, whose ongoing cancer treatment has limited him to participation in the British ceremony.
Murray, this is all happening at a very crucial time in the world. How is that all affecting what is happening on the stage and at the commemorations today?
Well, remembrance is front and center, but the fact that there is a full-fledged war raging in Eastern Europe, the kind that D-Day was supposed to end, is lingering in the background here everywhere. Now, ahead of the service, the Prime Minister met with the European Council President Charles Michel. And, we've not had a readout of the conversation yet, but it's likely they talked about the war in Ukraine. Next week, G7 leaders are going to be tackling that subject, including discussions as to what to do with frozen Russian assets. And Trudeau made passing reference in his speech to what's going on today, saying that democracy is still under threat. It's threatened by aggressors who want to redraw borders, by demagoguery, misinformation, disinformation, and foreign interference.
All right. Thank you, Murray.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Murray Brewster in Corseille-sur-Mer. As Europe marks D-Day, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he could provide long-range weapons to unspecified countries to attack Western targets. He says it would be a response to NATO allowing Ukraine to use alliance weapons against Russian territory. But German Chancellor Olaf Scholz told German parliamentarians that Ukraine can use German weapons to strike some targets inside Russia. Rebecca Collard reports from Berlin.
We have jointly reaffirmed that Ukraine has the right under international law to defend itself against attacks on its territory, its cities and its citizens, said Scholz. Ukraine can also use the weapons supplied by us and our allies to defend itself against such attacks. Germans have been divided on sending weapons to Ukraine. Many fear being pulled into a direct military confrontation with Russia 80 years after the end of the Second World War. The U.S. has also said it has authorized Ukraine to use its weapons to strike inside Russia. And yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin implied his country could use nuclear weapons if its sovereignty or territorial integrity were threatened. And he could supply weapons to states that could hit Ukraine's Western allies. If we see that these countries become involved in a war against us, what they're doing makes them directly involved in a war against the Russian Federation, we reserve the right to act in the same way, he said. And as Europe remembers D-Day, fears are growing once again that the war in Ukraine could expand. Rebecca Collard for CBC News, Berlin.
Polls open in European elections today. Next to India, this is the largest bloc of voters. More than 370 million people could cast ballots through to Sunday. And as Susan Ormiston reports, the result will reshape EU politics and policy.
We have had enough. Enough of the political elites telling us what to do. So get out and vote. Use your power as a citizen.
Voters are restless across the 27 countries in the EU. European elections are often a scorecard on national governments, and in the Netherlands, voters are shifting right, says political geographer Jose de Voogd.
The main issue is migration. The people are afraid that the Dutch culture will be affected about this. And furthermore, people are critical about green policies, about how they will affect people, especially the lower classes.
A majority of Europeans cite climate change as a priority, but the cost of living and security given the war in Ukraine are driving this vote. A far-right party, PVV, which aims to stop, quote, climate hysteria, amongst other things, is pulling support from the left. Leader Geert Wilders, who recently won Dutch elections, is looking to replicate that shift in Europe's parliament.
The next coming days are crucial to the future of Europe. Will it be with more open borders and immigration, or will it be a lot tougher? This is something that we are aiming for.
Polls are projecting the existing Conservative coalition will remain the majority in the EU, but that Europe's Green Party will shed strength and the far right could surge. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Amsterdam.
To India and a ceremony marking the 40th anniversary of Operation Blue Star. The Indian Army opened fire inside one of the Sikh religion's most holy sites, an operation that left hundreds dead and deeply marked the state of Punjab. Our South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has more from Amritsar.
The inner sanctum of the Golden Temple in Amritsar is full of faithful, here to commemorate a bloody day 40 years ago. June 6, 1984, when Indian troops stormed the holy site. To get to a militant separatist Sikh leader and his followers barricaded inside. Official figures put the death toll at around 400 people, but Sikh groups believe the number is in the thousands. The order to charge in came from then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, and those gathered here won't forget that.
The Indian state attacked a pilgrimage temple. They have used the tanks, commandos, full to kill Sikhs.
It changed Indian history in a time of militancy and violence in Punjab. Months later, Gandhi was assassinated by her Sikh bodyguards, and deadly riots broke out. The rancor still simmers years later, says 19-year-old Harshvinder Singh.
There is not much difference between the government of Indira Gandhi and the current government.
That's clear, he says, when some who are still advocating for a separate Sikh state called Khalistan are jailed under the National Security Act. He's talking about hardliner Amritpal Singh, who ran in the general election from jail and won. The son of one of Indira Gandhi's assassins also secured a seat in India's parliament. But for others at the temple like Prableen Kaur, today is not about politics, it's about remembrance.
To not let it happen again, because Sikhs are still a minority in this country and you never know.
Salima Shivji, CBC News, Amritsar.
A private member's bill in the Senate could see the creation of Canada's first ever national strategy to combat intimate partner violence. Bill S-249 is close to reaching the House of Commons. As Ariana Calland reports, it all began when a Newfoundland woman started sharing her story and teamed up with a local senator.
My last beating was September the 25th, 2014.
Earlier this spring, a woman from eastern Newfoundland took a deep breath and addressed members of the Senate in Ottawa.
I am Georgina McGrath, and I am a survivor of intimate partner violence.
McGrath is outspoken about the abuse she suffered, but says advocating on a provincial level isn't enough.
It has to be Canada as a whole, because we have to talk about every woman or every person that's being abused.
So in 2017, McGrath approached a politician from her community who she trusted.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Fabian Manning. I'm a senator from Newfoundland and Labrador.
Known for his dedication to the fishery, Senator Manning has now turned his attention to the issue of intimate partner violence. He proposed a private member's bill and promised McGrath he'd stick with it. Since he submitted the bill in 2018, StatsCan says the number of intimate partner violence cases reported to police have steadily increased.
I've met personally with 120 odd women here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
If passed, the bill would require government to make a strategy within 2 years, tackling things like how abuse should be reported in hospitals and clinics.
It's sad that we have to do this. It's sad that intimate partner violence is such an issue. But it is. It's reality.
McGrath and Manning hope it will go to the House of Commons in the fall. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
What's your favorite thing about living in Point Douglas?
There's lots of trees.
Lots of cheese in Point Douglas.
No, lots of trees.
Lots of trees. And what about you, Livea?
Well, I like living in this neighborhood because all my friends are around to support me and make me feel company.
Is there a favorite place you like to go in Point Douglas?
To sit by the trees and read my books. My name is Livea. I'm grade 3. Hi, I'm Ryland and I'm in grade 2. You're listening to Information Radio. Live from Norquay School. In Point Douglas! CBCB Radio 1.
How do I follow that? Come on, how cute. We are in the school this morning, Norquay School, right in the atrium, looking out the beautiful windows here where we can see the sun glistening off the many trees here in one of the oldest neighborhoods in Winnipeg, Point Douglas. I'm Marcy Marcuse, so thanks for joining us. It's our community studio here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on YouTube today. Time is 8:11 on this June the 6th. So we're here and we've been here all morning looking at the future of this oldest neighborhood, and that is because the city has come forth and saying we're going to put a plan in place, a secondary plan that will open the doors for, well, who knows. We're going to hear from the head of the residence committee this half hour about her hopes. We're also going to hear from a developer here who has a proposal to change one of the warehouse buildings that used to be a lumber mill into potential housing. So we're going to hear about both of those things. Also, we'll hear from another resident who's lived here in Point Douglas for 27 years. She's looking for a new spot to live in the neighborhood right now, but she has a deep love of the community. And she says any future plans for this area, in her view, have to include more affordable housing, and her wish is a 24-hour youth drop-in. So we'll hear more about why. So that is coming up still ahead this half hour. Right now, though, let's get into what's happening in the news this morning. Heather Wells is here with headlines.
Good morning. Well, a cyclist has been rushed to hospital in critical condition this morning after being hit by a vehicle. It happened just about an hour ago. Police are still on the scene at Wellington and Coburn. A number of streets in that area are shut down. You'll hear more from Dylan coming up. And the Manitoba Centennial Centre has started locking most of its exterior doors around the clock. The centre houses the Manitoba Museum and Centennial Concert Hall. People who use the parkade now have to buzz in through security. We're going to hear from the centre's CEO, Robert Olson, in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, why don't we go to Dylan right now, since you were talking about the fact that he have more about the traffic issues caused by this morning. Dylan?
Yeah, we're hearing that police are blocking traffic on Wellington between Coburn and Hugo. All traffic is being rerouted from that area, so plan accordingly to avoid that area on your morning commute today. And of course, yes, this is an incident involving a cyclist on the morning commute here, so always a good reminder. Drive safe, watch out for cyclists when you're in the big heavy vehicle, and make sure you're leaving enough room for them to get around. Thank you to everyone who called about that situation this morning. Anything else or updates to that situation, 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Dylan. And now to Abby Adeyemi, who's been keeping an eye on the forecast and audibly cheered when the sun finally came out this morning. Hi, Abby.
Yeah, coming with that shine we saw, the mercury just jumped to 13 at the moment in Winnipeg. We'll be seeing cloudy conditions later, but we started with a few showers early. Now it's sunny. The clouds will roll in later. We're looking at mostly cloudy conditions after that, and a chance of more showers in the day. And it's going to be coming with a bit of a breeze, so it's going to be breezy with winds coming from the northwest later. The high for today will reach 15. Now, as we move into the evening, the skies will be clearing up, and then the winds will calm down, becoming light after midnight, and we'll see a low of 8. For Friday, it's going to kick off with plenty of sunshine tomorrow morning into the late afternoon, and then we're going to be seeing a mix of sun and clouds. But right now in Winnipeg, sunny outside, 13 degrees in the downtown, windy throughout the day, and we'll be getting to a high of 15.
Well, we've heard a great deal this morning as we broadcast live from Norquay School about Point Douglas, this neighborhood. But my next guest has been thinking about making the area its very best for years. She is head of the Point Douglas Residents Committee, Kathleen Flynn. She's lived here since 2013, and she's at Norquay. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you and being in your neighborhood. Thanks for having CBC.
Oh, you're welcome.
So our panel is a panel of two. So Norman Nichols with us as well. Norman's one of the owners of Trotstem Inc., which owns a 5-acre plot of land in South Point Douglas. So that's at the corner of Higgins and Sutherland. If you were listening to the whole show this morning, I actually met the city councilors out there because they were pointing at this building saying they think this building and what's planned could be part of the future of Point Douglas. And so we wanted to hear more about the plans to develop it. This includes the building in question, Brown and Rutherford building. And Norman is here as well. Hi, Norman.
Hi, Marcy. Good to be here.
So let me hear first and foremost from each of you. What did you think, Catherine, when you heard that, in the words of your councillors, Point Douglas is finally getting a secondary plan? What did you think?
I thought finally.
You thought that as well.
Yeah, we've been agitating for that for years, and I know it's a very expensive process and it's complicated, so it's not something that happens overnight, but we've been asking for a secondary plan for at least a decade.
Why?
It guides a lot of things, you know, in terms of the hierarchy of how communities unfold. It's kind of in the middle, you know, so we're answerable to processes above us, like Plan Winnipeg, but it determines things like zoning, bylaws, what sorts of things can happen within the neighborhood. And we have an excellent team of people who are really enthusiastic about the project. It's super exciting when you talk to them because they're so on deck. They've walked through the neighborhood, they've read everything they could about Point Douglas, and they're like, yeah, we want to see this done not fast, but right.
Your proposal, Norman, is currently in the pre-application phase, I know, with the city. But what are you dreaming about? What are your plans for that big warehouse space, which used to, I think, be a lumber mill?
Yes, that's correct, Marcy. What's attracted us to the Point Douglas area really is the fact that we know Winnipeg is a hockey town, and Gretzky once said, you know, skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. And we feel there's a great future in the Point Douglas area here. We were first attracted by the J.R. Watkins building, a historic building there, and we restored that, and we turned that into a artist. We wanted to make a creative hub for artists, and that's been extremely successful, and the community has really embraced us as a developer in this area.
That's 90
and
Annabella?
That's correct.
Yep.
That's correct. And then we have moved on to we were attracted to the site at 5 Sutherland by the sheer size of it, and the city has defined that as a catalyst area for the future development of Point Douglas.
Do you put residences in there? Or
well, we propose to turn this into a walkable, bikeable, livable space, and in doing so, yes, there would be about 324 living housing units in there. You could imagine it in such a way as where an artisan could come. There would be workspaces there. There would be small shops in the area. There would be commercial space on the lower floors. And yes, there would be lots of living spaces as well.
And so people can position this as well. It's right on beside Sutherland. So Sutherland's where the new bus rapid transit's going to be as well. Catherine, when you're thinking about hearing these plans and also thinking about the transit line, how will that mix into your life here as a resident, more in the already residential pocket of North Point Douglas, rather?
Well, I think when we're talking about the secondary plan, one of the most important things for us is to preserve the look and feel of the neighborhood. So he's not talking about tearing the building down. You know, we don't want a bunch of modern fourplexes. We'd like to see our existing housing stock preserved, and we'd like to see the diversity preserved. And we'd like to see more sort of active, usable green space. I mean, things like a dog park. And you probably know we're a service desert. We have no local grocery stores, no cafes, no bakeries. A laundromat is something people are constantly asking for. So what he's proposing fits beautifully with our housing plan.
You said go where the puck's going to be. Why do you think that the puck will be in Point Douglas? Then why do you think this neighborhood's sort of the next one that's really going to be up and coming?
Well, it's a beautiful area, and there's a lot of people who've put a lot of effort into improving this area. A lot of people ask the question, why would you be interested in this area? They feel a little bit of a negative viewpoint. We ask the question, why not? We think there's a huge opportunity here. It's close to downtown. It's a project that would fit right in with the residents, and We've met with Amy as well in this area, and they're very supportive of what we hope to do.
So you're another fellow resident, yeah?
Yeah, but what we want to do really is we need this large space, and the reason we need such a large space is because we need critical mass to make this project work. And if without the size and the scale of the project that we hope to do, this project would not work. And so we're really trying to, and it's a complicated one because we have, the new national park, we have the transit, we have the Louise Bridge. There's a lot of moving pieces, but we're very confident that people in the city have been worked with us very well, and we think that if everybody all departments put a little bit of water with their wine, that this project could come to fruition.
Now, one of the things that is always a challenge is taking a neighborhood that has this kind of history, Catherine, and blending in, as you're nodding, to affordable housing and services for the people that are already here and have already been living and loving the neighborhood, but then looking at new projects and walking the line of not having it become too gentrified. Because a city planner on earlier this morning said that is the biggest concern that he had if we look forward. It could open the way for different development and to solve some of the needs that you're talking about residents have. But if you go too far, it's not Point Douglas anymore in a way. Is that one of your concerns? Is that something that you're watching as a resident here?
Absolutely. That is definitely something we're looking for. I mean, we have a very diverse community. And it's absolutely one of the treasures of living here. We've got people from many different backgrounds, many different economic and social strata, and it's one of the things that keeps it really interesting. I chose to live here. When I left Osborne Village, which was my last neighborhood, this was my first choice because it's so historic, and we've got the river on three sides, and it's just absolutely filled with fascinating people. We have our challenges. I think they're a bit oversold in the media. People aren't aware necessarily of the number of artists and teachers and musicians and just really, really interesting people that live here and contribute to the community.
What does it make you feel like when you heard Norman even say that, that stigma, and you nodded to it just now, that seems to persist and hang over your neighborhood? What's that like for you?
It's sort of a daily battle. I think our problems are not a whole lot different from the problems that affect the rest of the city. They just are a little more contained because we have so many hard boundaries here. We've got the river on three sides. We've got Main Street, which presents as a hard boundary because it's not always easy to cross. So it sort of keeps things contained. And I think we're also known as a pretty empathetic community. So when you've got people here who are unsheltered, we don't prefer to go after them the way maybe some other communities might. We'd rather help them. We've got our Mama Bears, we've got our Women's Center, and we do have a community of people. It comes with some frustrations, absolutely. But we know that, people who don't have homes, it's not often their fault. Nobody wakes up in the morning and go, wow, I'd really like to live in a tent this winter.
As a last question to each of you, I wonder, from your point of view, Norman, what would you say to other developers who would shy away from I'm not talking neighborhood now, I'm talking just the scale of the project in that old building. Either what would you say to them about why not to, or what would you say to the city about how to make it easier for developers to come into these old spaces and redevelop them?
Well, I think what would make it easier for a developer is there's a lot of red tape yet with the city. I mean, they're all trying very hard to make things happen, but it's a difficult thing to pull together. I think we need to all grasp the greater vision and not be concerned with our own department or our own part of it. But I think in order of removing the red tape and in order of everybody working together and everybody giving a little bit, that we can make things happen here. So I really think that there's a huge opportunity here to but to add to the community. We're not trying to change the community, we're trying to add to it.
And Catherine, finally for you, how could they get this wrong? Is there something you don't want to see in this plan?
You mean the secondary plan as a whole?
You talked about fourplexes. I wonder whether or not that's a concern of yours that overarches your hopes for the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think it's everybody's concern. I mean, infill housing has not always been well managed. And I know we have lots of contacts over in St. Boniface, and they've been very frustrated with sort of edge-to-edge development where all the old trees are removed. We want to maintain maintain the existing housing stock as much as possible. We'd like the residents who live here to be able to stay here. We're on a combined sewer, so that makes putting in a bunch of fourplexes almost impossible. So that I think that is going to be part of the secondary plan. But we really do want to maintain that whole look, the feel, the history of the neighborhood.
Well, we're just at the start of the process. The city's asking people to weigh in, so we thought we'd start the conversation. Thank you for being here, Norman.
Thank you.
And
Thank
Catherine,
you very much.
thank you. All the best.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, good luck moving forward and getting that input from residents. And so Catherine Flynn, head of the Point Douglas Residents Committee, Norman Nickel, one of the owners of Trotsdam, which is hoping to develop a 5-acre plot of land in South Point Douglas. And you can weigh in at winnipeg.ca on the secondary plan. Next year, it should go to council. Right now, they're collecting different ideas. Well, this morning, we're going to end the show with a resident that a lot of people around these parts seem to know. Many of the initiatives in this neighborhood that have led to improvement in Point Douglas have often involved women, and often Indigenous women. There's a North Point Douglas Women's Center across the street here from Norquay School. There's a Sistars organization, even the Senior Center here, and the beautiful Manitoba Indigenous Cultural Education Center. Now, I suspect many of the women who are committed to the area might have the same kind of can-do attitude as Shelley Stevenson. Shelley also happens to be Indigenous. She's 58, and I spoke with her this week outside the center, and people were honking and waving because most folks here know Shelley by her nickname. Did you say Shelley Belly?
Shelley Belly. Everybody in Point Douglas knows me as Shelley Belly.
You said when I said I wanted to connect with residents here, you've been here longer than everybody.
Yeah.
So when you were here back in the day, what was this space?
It was a store, and it was shut down due to the fact that they were selling solvents. There used to be a phone booth right outside here too. It was 27 years that I lived in Point Douglas, and I've watched this community go from bad to good to bad to good, but I know what it's capable of, and it's capable of being great things. So.
What brought you here to the center?
You know how the streets are nowadays. There's a lot of people out on the streets. I want to make sure that I see those same faces, because when I don't see the faces, there's something going on, right? And a lot of them it's not noticeable to a lot of people.
Did you grow up down here then, or did you move here?
I was born in the North End. I was raised in Elmwood, and then I moved myself and my children to Point Douglas, and then my kids grown up. They're all grown up, and they all live just on Howlett.
So Shelley, when you say you've seen this neighborhood go through lots of different, ups and downs, what makes it go down, and what makes it go up?
I think when we're talking about it going down, it's a lot of crime, drugs. When all the youth gangs started popping up, no discipline for the young kids, no respect from them, no guidance. They do what they want. They find their next little family with their little groups. Way back in my day when I was growing up, the bikers kept it to themselves. They never involved civilians, and now you got all these youth gangs, and they don't have no respect for anybody. It doesn't matter if you're a 90-year-old lady. They're going to knock it down and take what you got.
So right now, are we in people are
right
waving?
Now,
Hi!
I would say we're kind
Everyone knows
of at just a medium standstill for right now. However, summer's coming right up around the corner.
What about what you love about Point Douglas, and why?
Look at it. It's beautiful. You go down to the park, 6 o'clock in the morning, you see that sun just shining beautiful across that park. It just gives you so much inspiration that, today's going to be a good day. But this is a beautiful community, and the people are wonderful.
So they're doing a city plan now for Point Douglas. They're saying we're going to do a neighborhood plan for Point Douglas. What do you think that you would love to see here, given how much you love the neighborhood, Shelley?
24-hour youth drop-in. Get the kids off the street at night. Give them a place to call home, to connect, and get them back in school, man. I wasn't always straight-laced or anything when I was growing up either. I was a wild child, but it was something I didn't want for my kids. My thing was school, man. I don't care what shape you're getting up, you're going to school. Get your education. They need their education. But I think school is so important. So give them some programming. Give them a safe place, a 24-hour place. Oh, and laundromat. We need a laundromat. There's not one laundromat in this community. So, of course, I come back to Point Douglas almost every day. I'm looking for a home back in Point Douglas. So if anybody can hear me, you know who Shelley Belly is.
Affordable housing's on the list, actually.
You know what? Affordable housing anywhere right? Not just in Point Douglas, but we need affordable housing everywhere. There goes one of my clan there.
Do you know everyone? Like, people are walking by and waving by.
So the big warehouse that had the fire way back quite a few years ago, that's a big area. Build a development right there, low-income development, right? There's enough space to build 3 developments there. That's like laying sitting nothing, right? That's from Sutherland and Euclid all the way up to right here at Austin, right? All that area. 3 developments, low housing, right?
Appreciate meeting you, Shelley Belly.
You too. Thank you.
Shelley Stevenson spent decades of her life living in Point Douglas. Speaking with us this week as we were exploring the neighborhood. Well, she talked about youth. She talked about schools. Today on Radio Noon, the call-in conversation, school boards across the province, across the country, in fact, are struggling to keep teachers. How do we stop people from leaving teaching, and how do you encourage more young people to want to be teachers? You can call and leave a message now, 204-788-3797. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's mostly cloudy. 13 degrees right now in downtown Winnipeg. A high today of just 15 and a cold north wind through the day. The suspect arrested after this week's cross-border manhunt has run from police before. 29-year-old David Frank Burling was arrested northwest of Yorkton, Saskatchewan, yesterday. It follows a police chase that started in Winnipeg and led officers to Niverville. That's where police shot and killed one man. A woman there was arrested, and investigators say Burling then took off in a stolen vehicle. Burling has prior convictions for fleeing from police and auto theft. He just recently finished a 2.5-year sentence for leading police in the Portage La Prairie area on a chase in June of 2022. Burling was shot by officers before his arrest in that incident. A cyclist has just been rushed to hospital in critical condition after being hit by a vehicle on Wellington Crescent and Coburn Street. Winnipeg police say it happened around 7 this morning. A number of streets are closed around the area at Wellington Crescent, including Grosvenor, Hugo, and Dorchester. Police expect to release more information later today. Students from Cross Lake First Nation in northern Manitoba are part of this morning's D-Day ceremonies in France. A group from Mikasso High School was on hand to recognize the contribution of Indigenous soldiers who were among Canadian soldiers who were part of the invasion 80 years ago. Several are buried at the Canadian War Cemetery in France. Grade 10 student Jadis Colombe was called on in the last minute to read a commitment to remember in Cree when the student who was supposed to do the reading lost their voice.
This ground is full of bravery, and I'm glad that I was brave enough to go stand up there and, be brave. I'm very, very thankful I was able to do that. Everyone's proud of me back home. Everyone's proud of me here, and I'm proud of myself.
Colombe worked with her teachers to make sure she knew all the words in Cree. She says the contributions of Indigenous soldiers are an important part of our history. The Manitoba Centennial Centre has started locking most of its exterior doors around the clock. The centre houses the Manitoba Museum and the Centennial Concert Hall. People who use the parkade now have to buzz in through security. Robert Olson, the Centennial Centre's CEO, says most of the problems have happened overnight.
There's been an uptick in the occurrences of drug paraphernalia, which we clean up on a regular basis, an uptick of encampment in and around our loading bay doors, which we're having to move out.
Olson says staff inside the building have been threatened, and there have been numerous incidences of broken glass. The museum doors will remain open during museum hours. Concert hall doors will now open 2 hours before events. Construction of a new school in Sage Creek is in limbo. The planned K to grade 8 French immersion school will serve Sage Creek and Bonavista in South Winnipeg. It was supposed to open September 2025, but the province says funding is delayed. Now the Louis Riel School Division has to consider whether to borrow millions to keep the construction on track. Frank Capasso is president of the Sage Creek Residents Association.
This is a must that we have a school in Sage Creek, because our kids have gone out of the area to go to school, but it's time that we give them more space and more room to be in Sage Creek.
Some parents want to know why an approved project is being delayed. The school division will vote on whether to get a loan later this month. It has gained steam on social media and is catching the attention of many, including Winnipeg police. It's a game called Senior Assassin. Players join a group. They are assigned an opponent they have to hit with a water gun. Some players are using an app to form groups for the game, but grade 12 student Matthew Howie in Winnipeg says the location sharing aspect isn't for everyone.
I learned that you had to have your location on during it. I don't really want people that I don't know knowing where I live and kind of showing up at my house, my place of work.
Yesterday, Winnipeg police were called to a report about a male with a firearm. Turns out it was just some kids playing with water guns. Constable Claude Chancy says they were playing the assassin game and there was no threat to public safety. You can find more on all these stories and others updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
No. We'll connect with Dylan in a moment for traffic. I'll do my thank yous here from Norquay School. Dylan Longhurst, Abby Adiyemi, Kevin Ipatable, Brad Lillies, Wendy Parker, Corey Funk for the show this morning, as well Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, and Aaron Broman in our news department. Huge thanks to Norquay School for having us, our community studio this morning in Point Douglas, and to the principal here, Colin Bruce Smith. I know Dylan's been busy on the phones covering traffic, so I'm wondering, Dylan, what the latest is as we finish the show here.
Yes, two things to mention real quick. Northbound Sterling Lyon approaching McGilvery. There's new construction in the area near Lindenwood Drive, and that is surprising some commuters who found it very, very slow this morning, so something to keep in mind. As well, ongoing police presence at Wellington, blocking Coburn and Hugo. All traffic is being rerouted, so plan accordingly today due to that incident with a cyclist earlier today. Thank you to everyone who called about that.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry I'm interrupting you, but we just got some cutie patooties that are going to say a farewell. Ready, guys? 1, 2, 3.
Goodbye from Point Douglas.
Thank you, students at Norquay School. Thank you, Norquay. It's been such a lovely morning out here. And let's go to Abby for one last look at the weather forecast. Abby?
Yeah, that sunny break we saw is gone. It's now mostly cloudy. We'll be expecting a mix of cloud and windy conditions today. We're seeing a high of 15 in Winnipeg, highs of 1 in Churchill, 6 in Thompson. The south will hover 14 to 18 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby. Students are starting to come into Norquay today. Just a reminder, there's a big graduation powwow in Winnipeg School Division over at Tech Block today. I know a lot of these students are going to be heading over there for the day. Thanks to Norquay School once again for hosting us this morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in community with CBC 89.3 FM. Take care, be well. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.